Chapter 78. The black hole this time, however, did not give off an irresistible pressure like before. Seemingly in a blink of an eye, they were standing on a beach, and in front of them was a boundless ocean. The air was filled with spiritual energy, and Zhu Yao felt as though she had come back to life. She, Hu Han-san, had finally returned. Feng Yi, who came out before them, was already meditating on the ground to recover her spiritual energy. Zhu Yao followed suit and sat down to recover as well, while Zidan stood guard at the side. 15 minutes later, everyone's expressions finally recovered a little. Feng Yi stood up, looked at Zhu Yao, and clenched her fists, as though she was hesitating about something. In the end, she still walked over, and retracted that prideful expression of hers. "Thank you, for saving my life." She thanked her with such a serious expression, Zhu Yao felt a little embarrassed. "You're welcome. I was merely following the sect master's orders." "Still, I have to thank you." Feng Yi looked straight at her. If there's anything I can be of use to, I will do my best as well." "Really?" Zhu Yao suddenly recalled something. Feng Yi nodded. "Then give me the water spirit." Although the water spirit was still in her divine sense, it was still hers after all. Unexpectedly, Feng Yi did not even hesitate, and instead, replied with a smile. "If you want it, I naturally won't reject you." "Thank you." Zhu Yao thanked her sincerely. She did not expect that the water spirit this time would be obtained so smoothly. She had even thought that there would be a tough battle. After pondering for a moment, she took out the water spirit from her divine sense, walked towards the ocean in front, and placed the water spirit directly into the water. "Water spirit, hurry and leave. Return to the ocean." The moment her voice fell, the water spirit that was still obediently lying in her hands like a sapphire earlier, suddenly emitted out a blue light and turned into a real water droplet. Floating in the air, it looked as though it was blinking its eyes and looking at her suspiciously. "Chick." It let out the same sound as the wood spirit. Zhu Yao smiled. She knew that it was the same as the wood spirit, and could understand other people's words. However, this water spirit was quieter, and not as lively as the wood spirit. "Return to the water. No matter what, do not appear in front of others again." The greed of humans was something that could not be changed. Just like the Shao Yi in the dream. Clearly, he only possessed the metal and wood dual spirit veins, and logically speaking, he only needed these two. However, he had all 5 spirits in his hands, and he was not even willing to let go of his ascension. Most likely, the others were the same as well, it was just that the others did not have Shao Yi's fortuitous encounter. Hence, Shao Yi was a bug. As long as the 5 spirits existed, there would be endless bugs in this world. Only by making it impossible for people to find the 5 spirits could the problem be solved from the root. Gee. Shui Ling paused for a moment before suddenly seeming to understand something, jumping up and down in joy. He suddenly flew over to her, kissed her, and then sank into the sea. He could no longer be seen. "You. What happened to you?" Feng Yi looked at her with a face of disbelief. She never thought that the reason why he asked her for the water spirit was just to let it go. "Little brother, why did you release the water spirit?" Zidan was stunned as well. I don't have a water spirit root, so this is useless to me." "Why don't you let him go?" Zhu Yao said without a care. "Even if it's not, it's still a rare treasure. Not only did you release it, but you also forbade it from appearing in front of others. To prevent others from using it to do bad things." Zhu Yao explained. "How do you think Chen Zi managed to cultivate such a terrifying demonic art, and how did he break the great mountain barrier formation of Ancient Hills sect from the sea? It's most likely because of the water spirit." That's true. The corner of Feng Yi's lips moved, as though she wanted to say something. In the end, she still sighed. You're really an idiot. After looking at her, the smile at the corner of her lips deepened. Zhu Yao suddenly trembled a little unnaturally, and shook her head to shake off that strange feeling. Ha 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 ha, little brother, you're still the broad-minded one. Zidan praised, and habitually slapped her back. Zhu Yao's heart instantly churned, and with a pooh sound, she spat out blood all over his face. What happened to you? Feng Yi was the first to react, and hurriedly held on to her who was on the verge of collapse. Her expression was no longer as calm as before, and even her hands which were inspecting her injuries were trembling a little. Why aren't you recovering your spiritual energy? After checking, he realized that he still didn't have any spiritual energy left in his body. In addition, he had just been chased by the herd of beasts and had forcefully repaired her meridians, so he had already suffered a huge backlash of magic power. It seems like I can't recover my spiritual qi. Feng Yi and Zidan were both stunned, and they did not know how to help her either. They had never heard of anyone being unable to recover their spiritual energy after suffering from a backlash of mystic energy. Could it be that she had suffered an injury that they couldn't see? For a moment, the two of them were at a loss of what to do. Feng Yi was a little flustered, as she hurriedly transferred her own wood spiritual energy over. However, the moment it entered her body, it dispersed. What should we do? I need to recover my spiritual qi as soon as possible. Zhu Yao's hand had turned purple from her grip. She had the thunder spiritual root, so the wood spiritual root was useless to her. It wasn't that she didn't want to recover, but she didn't dare to casually guide the spiritual qi into her body. If she wasn't careful, it might cause another spiritual qi riot. Therefore, she could only wait for her spiritual power to recover on its own. Back when she was in the foundation building realm, it was still fine. There wasn't much spiritual aura in her body, so she could recover after a night's sleep. Later, Jindan required 10 days, but now it seemed that he wouldn't be able to recover in a few months. She really missed her master's purple lightning bolt. As though he had heard her summon, after Zhu Yao puked out her third mouthful of blood, a familiar figure sprinted over from the horizon. Dressed in white, it fluttered even though there was no wind, and on his face that was as cold as ice, his eyes were currently staring at the person who was puking out blood on the ground. Senior Marshal Uncle Yu Yan. Feng Yi was startled. Before she could even react, she saw him wave his hand, and the youth in her embrace had already flown into his hands. And then, without saying a single word, he turned around and flew away, leaving behind the two people on the ground who were completely unaware of the situation. Ancestral Martial Uncle, this is. Zidan was startled, and then, his eyes suddenly shone, as he guessed. Could it be that he has a way to save little brother? A hint of joy flashed past Feng Yi's face as well. If it was that person, he would definitely have a way. Thank you, Ancestral Martial Uncle, for saving us. Zidan happily shouted towards the direction where the person disappeared. And currently, a certain master was fuming with anger. Looking at his stupid disciple who was still puking out blood in his embrace, he wished that he could immediately teach her a lesson. The moment he did not look at her, she would turn herself into something unrecognizable. Was there a disciple who behaved like this? Master Father. Zhu Yao felt that she was about to cry. Earlier, no matter how bitter or tired she was, she did not feel anything. However, the moment she saw him, for some reason, she felt so wronged. Hugging onto his neck, she buried her head into his embrace. Master. It hurts. A certain master turned and glanced at her, and coldly said. Bear with it. Can't we just play around happily? Recently, ZMO was a little troubled. Zmo expressed that it was not easy to be the sect master of Ancient Hill sect. No matter how big or small the miscellaneous matters were, he had to ask about them. When he had nothing better to do, he even had to mediate the relationship between the various mountains, the allocation of personnel, and so on. Take the newly joined elder for example. If not for his pair of fiery eyes, which allowed him to discover the unusual relationship between him and his ancestral martial uncle, which could not be revealed to the world, he might have really treated him as a casual elder and dealt with him. However, this person was not easy to deal with. The fact that the Grand Uncle Master assigned him to him meant that he believed in his abilities. He definitely could not disappoint the Grand Uncle Master's hopes, so he arranged for him to be at the Taming Beast Peak, which he was good at. In order to give him more prestige, he even assigned him the glorious task of rescuing the Venerable One. Sure enough, they succeeded in saving the Venerable One, and the Venerable One praised him a lot. Although he was slightly injured, it was negligible. The most important thing was, through this incident, his reputation in the sect had greatly increased, and he had quickly and smoothly integrated into this large group. Wherever he went, there were praises for him. Zmo felt that his plan had succeeded. Ancestral Grand Uncle would definitely notice his efforts, and then, he would greatly praise him. Perhaps, if he was happy, he might even throw him 1 or 2 precious treasures. Just thinking about it made him a little excited. Zmo's imagination ran wild, and just when he was planning to rest, a white figure silently appeared in front of his bed just like that, and a face made of ice was currently staring at him coldly. Zmo shivered, and he had almost rolled down from the bed. Grand Martial Uncle. His expression wasn't right. Recently, Yu Yan was a little irritable as well. He had accidentally taken in a worrisome disciple, causing him to be worried to death. Not only did he have to be on guard against her courting death, but he also had to be on guard against others leading her to courting death. In the past, his disciple always liked to run out, so be it. This time, he just placed her in the sect. At his own doorstep, she could come back in a half-dead state. It was simply impossible for him to guard against it. And the main culprit was actually the sect master Zmo, who had always been steady. Yu Yan felt that he definitely could not tolerate it. Why did he have to harm his one and only disciple instead of harming his entire clan's disciples? Hence, after treating his disciples' injuries, Yu Yan immediately charged into Zmo's room to denounce him. However, when he arrived at his destination, he recalled that his disciple had concealed her identity this time. Zmo basically did not know about it, and had simply treated her as a regular elder. For a moment, he had no reason to accuse her, but he was still unhappy. Therefore, she could only stare at him with a murderous aura, stare at him, stare at him, stare at him. Zmo, who had his imagination run wild, was drenched in cold sweat from the stare, yet, he did not understand what he had done wrong. As the sect master, Zmo could be considered as someone who was used to seeing big scenes. However, after being stared at by a person who was overflowing with killing intent for an entire hour, he would more or less be frightened. Even his legs were beginning to turn soft. Just as he was about to risk his life and ask what his ancestral grand uncle was thinking of, Yu Yan, once again, returned the same way he came, with a swoosh. He did not change. Zmo, although he did not understand why his ancestral grand uncle was here, Zmo heaved a deep sigh of relief. He had the misconception that his life had been spared. Unfortunately, he was happy too early, because on the second day, Yu Yan once again appeared in his room. He still did not say a single word. After staring at him for an entire hour, he then left without saying a single word. This repeated for 3 days, and Zmo was about to collapse. Ancestral Grand Uncle, just what did I do wrong? Just tell me, and I will change, alright? Chapter 79. After his careful analysis and serious study of ancestral granduncle's actions, ZMO finally came to a conclusion. Could it be that he felt that he had not done enough, and Elder Jiangyu's current reputation had yet to reach the standard he expected? Of course, with Granduncle Master's title as the #1 person in the immortal cultivation world, Granduncle Master's current achievements were indeed beneath his notice. The more CMO thought about it, the more he felt it was possible. He silently decided that in the future, he had to grab hold of all opportunities, and even if he did not have any, he had to create opportunities to increase the influence of Elder Jiangyu. Hence, Xu Yao, who had just recovered from her injuries and was ruthlessly taught a lesson by her own master, when she returned to her own cave residence, she was thrown into a daze by the large amount of sect affairs that Wang Shuji brought over. Fuck, what happened to being a leisurely elder? How many spiritual plants had died in the medicine peak? How many medicinal herbs had been used in the elixir peak? How many talisman papers had been wasted in the talisman peak? Even how many cubs had been born in the taming beast peak? Why did she have to care about this situation? She didn't know how to deliver a baby. Big sis Xu Yao. Wang Shuji looked a little worriedly at Xu Yao, who was already on the verge of collapse. Are you alright? Hee, do I look fine to you? Xu Yao replied with a bitter smile. This won't do. She had to look for ZMO and have a chat. She still had the heavy responsibility of saving the world on her shoulders. I heard you were injured 2 days ago. Wang Shuji was a little hesitant and looked at her guiltily. I'm sorry. I only found out today that you went to such a dangerous place. Xu Yao turned her head and rolled her eyes at him. So what if you knew about it in advance? The rescue operation was something decided by the nascent soul stage upper echelons. As an Azoth stage practitioner, he naturally wouldn't know about it. If I knew, I naturally wouldn't have let big sis Xu Yao take this risk. Wang Shuji was a little agitated. Yutzang City was the city of heretic practitioners, so how could he be at ease to let her go? Little wimp. Xu Yao pressed his head down. This is an adult's matter. You should just focus on cultivating. What are you worrying about? Big sis Xu Yao. Wang Shuji exploded and angrily pulled down her hand. I'm not a child anymore. Don't treat me like one. Yes. You're an adult now. Xu Yao half-heartedly replied. Staring at the various account books in front of her, she suddenly had an idea. They were all piled up. Come, I'll give you a chance to prove yourself. Wang Shuji was startled for a moment. Letting out a deep sigh, he said. Don't tell me you're going to push all this on me from the start. How can you say it's a push? This is to train you. In any case, she wouldn't admit it no matter what. She patted his chest and said, a man must be responsible. Go. The chance to prove yourself is here. You can do it. You. Wang Shuji's face was full of confusion. After a long while, she sighed deeply and accepted the small mountain of account books. He put it into his storage pouch. You'll only acknowledge my abilities when you bully me. How could that be? Whether she bullied him or not, she didn't think that he had any ability. He's still a kid. Pat his head. This time, Wang Shuji did not resist and allowed her claws to be arrogant on her head. She looked at her familiar yet strange face and clenched her hands. As though he had decided on something. Big sis Xu Yao. I've thought about what you told me the other day. Ah. What words? He pulled down Xu Yao's troublesome hands. Yet, he did not let go, and tightly held on to her palm. The temperature of his palm was a little scorching. Xu Yao awkwardly twitched, but did not move. A man cannot stand without his words, so I've decided to keep my promise. Just what was he trying to say? I've decided. Wang Shuji's hands suddenly tightened, to the point where Zhu Yao felt a little pain. No matter how you turn into, I will take you as my wife and take care of you for the rest of your life. Zhu Yao did not sit stably, and almost fell off the chair. What the hell? She was just joking that day. He couldn't possibly have treated it seriously and seriously considered it, right? I know, with your current appearance, others will definitely have many misunderstandings towards us. Wang Shuji still explained with a stern look. But, no matter what others say, just ignore them. Zhu Yao's face darkened when she heard this. He was actually even considering such worldly views. Just what was this little wimp thinking in his head during the few days she was not around? She could not help but reach out her hand to touch his forehead. You don't have a fever. Then why was he speaking nonsense? Big sis Zhu Yao, I'm serious. Wang Shuji grew anxious, as he stared straight into her eyes. That expression of his was as serious as it could get. Zhu Yao felt her head aching. Having a little wimp who was overly serious about everything was truly terrifying. With lightning speed, she forcefully flicked her finger on his fair forehead. In order to achieve the desired effect, she had even infused her spiritual energy. Little wimp Wang instantly broke through, releasing her hand, and held onto his forehead instead. It was so painful that tears were about to fall out. Zhu Yao glanced at him with disdain. I was just joking that day, teasing you. Why are you treating it seriously? If you tease this old lady again, be careful that I don't spank your buttocks. Big sis Zhu Yao. Wang Shuji held onto his forehead, and glanced at her with teary eyes. Could it be that you think the words I said to you were merely the jokes of a child? Or else? Zhu Yao shrugged. Wang Shuji's face instantly flushed red. Widening his eyes, he ruthlessly glared at her a few times, as though he was suppressing his own anger with all his might. A moment later, he suddenly stood up, and coldly snorted at her. Without even bidding farewell, he angrily left. Yo, he's rebelling now. The moment Wang Shuji left, he did not come to see her for a whole 6 to 7 days. This little wimp's temper sure is big. Zhu Yao pondered for a moment, and felt that he had already entered the rebellious phase, and it was precisely the period where he especially liked to go against his parents. She silently pondered, should she change his education method? Just as she was pondering, the cry of a phoenix resounded. Sovereign Feng Yi suddenly descended from the mountain peak, and riding on that phoenix, she stopped in her courtyard. Why did this high mountain flower come to her place? She couldn't be planning to settle the score, right? Zhu Yao faintly had a bad premonition. Greetings to Sovereign Feng Yi. Zhu Yao stepped forward and bowed. No need to be so courteous. Feng Yi nodded. After sizing him up for a moment, she hesitantly spoke up. Your injuries, Zhu Yao smiled. They're already completely healed. When her master made a move, he alone was equivalent to 2. That's good then. Feng Yi seemed to heave a sigh of relief, and her expression eased up a little as well. As though she had never spoken to someone like this before, she seemed a little restrained. Sovereign, if you don't mind, do you want to take a seat in the courtyard? Zhu Yao suggested. Feng Yi nodded, and followed him to the stone chair in the courtyard to sit down. Only then did she speak up hesitantly. Is it possible for me to check on your injuries? After all, he was injured because of her. Without seeing it for herself, she was still worried. Zhu Yao generously reached out her paw. Take a look then, take a look then. In any case, she had to grab onto every single person who came to see her. Sect Master did it, Zidan did it, and even Little Wimp did it as well. It made her feel like reaching out her paw whenever she saw someone, and the only thing she lacked was a woof. Feng Yi looked for a moment, and her expression eased up a little. Retracting her hand, she then turned around and pulled out a large pile of items, placing them in front of her. There were medicinal pellets, spiritual herbs, and even a few unknown mystic tools. They were piled up on the entire table, and every single one of them was faintly emitting out spiritual energy. With a single glance, she could tell that they were incredible treasures. What was she trying to do? To flaunt her wealth. The reason why I came here this time is to thank you. Feng Yi glanced at her, as though it was her first time doing something like this. Her expression was a little uncomfortable. These are my thank you gifts. Zhu Yao was startled. She never expected that this Feng Yi would be such a good person. Looking at the table full of sparkling treasures, she really wanted to keep all of them into her pouch. However, she did not know when she would die. If these things were to follow her, it would be a complete waste. Never mind, there's no need for that. Zhu Yao pressed down on her restless paw. I didn't save you for these anyway. It's best if you take them back. Feng Yi blanked for a moment, and was a little anxious. If you don't fancy these, feel free to tell me what you need. I will definitely find them for you. There's really no need. When she said that, Zhu Yao began to feel a little embarrassed. Didn't you give me the water spirit? What else is more precious than it? Feng Yi pondered for a moment. That was true. She did not insist any further, and kept all of the items. Sighing, she then revealed a smile. You're really a strange person. Aren't you just as strange? Seeing that her expression had warmed up quite a bit, Zhu Yao's courage instantly grew. To tell you the truth, I hated you quite a bit in the past. Feng Yi looked at her with widened eyes, and her expression was a little disappointed. Zhu Yao continued. In the past, you always put on a prideful look that no one should get close to, as though everyone should be fawning over you. I finally barged into that secret room to save you with much difficulty, but I never expected that I would be despised by you. When she recalled the incident in the passageway, she could not help but retort. Seeing her lowering her head in guilt, she continued. But after interacting with you for a long time, I realized that you're not that bad after all. You have a rather good heart. At the very least, she understood gratitude. Otherwise, she wouldn't have given her the water spirit, right? Only then did Feng Yi's expression turn a little better. The hand she placed on her thigh, tugged on her skirt a little reservedly, as though she was a little nervous. After hesitating for a moment, she spoke up. Then, what do you think of me, right now? Pretty good. Zhu Yao replied with a huge smile. Continue to maintain it. Perhaps, we might even become best friends. Before she could even finish, a Sword Mountain disciple suddenly flew down, cupped his fist, and bowed towards the two of them. Grand Marshal Ant, Elder Jiang, the sect master has instructed this disciple to inform the two of you to head to the Great Hall for a discussion. Discussion. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. That old man couldn't possibly be giving her a bunch of things again, right? What is it? The disciple replied. Senior Marshal Uncle Shao Yi has returned. Currently, he's in the Great Hall. Zhu Yao glanced at Feng Yi and nodded. Only then did they head towards the direction of the Great Hall of the main mountain. Chapter 80. Her doubts were answered when she saw Shao Yi standing alone at the center of the Great Hall, facing off against the mountain lords. Rui Yu was not by his side. Most likely, he had spent the extra 3 days comforting Rui Yu. Master. Seeing that they had entered the hall, Shao Yi welcomed them with a joyous expression. To be more precise, he welcomed Feng Yi. I'm glad you're safe and sound. Feng Yi replied indifferently, yet, she brushed past him, and walked towards the upper seat. Xiao Yi's expression instantly turned a little ugly. In the end, there was a gap between the two of them. Zhu Yao rubbed her nose, and found a chair to sit on as well. She had a little naughty thoughts in her mind. This scene was really something to see and hear. After taking a closer look at Xiao Yi's cultivation, as expected, it had increased by quite a bit. Earlier, he was at the second level of the nascent soul stage, and now, he had already reached the pinnacle of the second level. Faintly, he looked as though he was about to break through to the third level. It seemed that in these 10 days, he and Ruiyu had done a lot of things that they should do. His own master was imprisoned in the desolate lands, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive, yet, he was immersed in the warmth of his lover. Thinking about it this way, losing Feng Yi's trust, he deserved it. Wait, why can I see his face now? The word bug on his face seemed to have faded a little. Zhu Yao was startled, as she slightly raised her head. Fuck, the exclamation mark above his head had also disappeared. Was it because she had released Shui Ling that the trajectory had been slightly altered? The more Zhu Yao thought about it, the more she felt it was possible. In her dream, Xiao Yi had obtained 3 spirits and then, based on the connection between the 5 spirits, he summoned the earth spirit and the fire spirit. Currently, he only had the metal spirit in his hands. In other words, the earth spirit and the fire spirit would not be his. If she were to obtain the metal spirit in his hands as well, he would lose his only cheat, and naturally, he would no longer be a bug. When she thought of this, Zhu Yao instantly became excited. Senior martial brother. He had colluded with evil cultivators. Since ancient times, good and evil could not coexist. This trend could not be allowed to persist. Sect Master, please handle this impartially. Zidan said with a furious expression. Xiao Yi frowned deeply. Senior martial brother Zidan, please do not slander me. Do you have any proof that I'm colluding with heretical cultivators? Evidence. Zidan coldly snorted, as though he was extremely furious. Walking to Zhu Yao's side, he said furiously. You want proof, right? Brother, tell me. Was he together with that demoness in Yutzang City? Zhu Yao had no choice but to nod. So it was because of this matter. It was no wonder she and Feng Yi were called over in such a hurry. Heretic practitioners and deity practitioners had been fighting for so many years, and they had long been like fire and water. It was no wonder Zidan would be angry until now. This time, Xiao Yi had made a huge blunder. Xiao Yi's expression turned even uglier, however, he still refuted with confidence. Both of you are biased against me and Ruiyu, and your words are not trustworthy. And even if I'm with her, it doesn't prove that I'm colluding with an evil cultivator. In any case, it's your turn. He looked at the two of them coldly and revealed a hint of disdain. Don't forget that she was the one who let you go in Yutzang City. That's why you survived. Not only do you not know how to be grateful, but you also want to frame me. You are simply unreasonable. Zidan was instantly angered to the point where his hair was about to stand on end. Zhu Yao was even more dumbfounded by his words of changing the concept. Grateful to Ruiyu. Did she hear wrongly? She was the one who caught them, but she had to thank her instead. What kind of joke was this? All right. Even if you don't believe my and little brother Zhang's words, you should be able to believe your master's words, right? Zidan took a deep breath. Looking at Feng Yi who was seated on top, he cupped his hands and said. Senior Martial Aunt, you saw the scene back then as well. Back then in the underground city. Was he colluding with that heretic cultivator? Zhu Yao sighed. Not only did she see it, she even watched a free show of, You Are Me. You Are Me. Feng Yi recalled that live erotic scene as well, and her expression instantly darkened quite a bit. Her brows were tightly furrowed, and only after a while did she helplessly nod her head. Master. Xiao Yi widened his eyes, and looked at Feng Yi with a face of disbelief. His expression instantly sank to the bottom, and his face was filled with, "How can you not understand me?" look. Feng Yi did not care about him, and immediately turned her head away. Xiao Yi's face instantly turned ashen. Although seeing Xiao Yi suffer a setback, Zhu Yao still felt pretty good. In the end, he did not deserve to die. If he was really convicted of the crime of colluding with a heretic cultivator, most likely, he would no longer have a place to stand in the cultivation world. Although he was a little of a stud, and would not be able to move his legs when he saw a beautiful woman, overall, he was not too detestable. Adding that back then in Yucang City, he could be considered to have saved her. Xiao Yi, are you really colluding with that heretic cultivator? Zimo's expression sank as well. The situation was serious. Although he was the sovereign's disciple, for the sake of Ancient Hill sect, he could not be lenient. I think there's a misunderstanding here. Zhu Yao stood up, stopped Zmo, and coughed. Actually, back then in Yucang City, the three of us were captured by that heretic cultivator, and the other party was a demigod stage practitioner. When her words fell, the great hall was instantly in an uproar. Heretic cultivators had always been hard to deal with, and they all had their own way of doing things. However, after so many years, the reason why the righteous sects were able to suppress them was because there were demigod stage practitioners in the righteous sects. Although heretic cultivators could cultivate faster than disciples of righteous sects by relying on heretic arts, they were still unable to reach the peak. Now, however, a demigod stage practitioner had appeared, and everyone could not help but exclaim in shock. To the righteous sects, this was definitely a huge threat. Back then, the three of us were not her match, and we almost died. We lost our lives in her hands. Zhu Yao continued. In the end, Xiao Yi was quick-witted, and bewitched that female practitioner, allowing him to save everyone. But clearly, he and that woman. Zidan was still indignant, and wanted to speak up. Zhu Yao pulled him. Senior Marshal Brother, back then, the entire place was filled with heretic practitioners. I believe Junior Marshal Brother Xiao had no other choice, and thus, he disguised himself. If he really betrayed the sect, why would he return, and walk right into the trap? Zidan frowned, and pondered for a moment, before he no longer argued. So Junior Marshal Brother Xiao was merely putting on a show, and deceived that heretic practitioner. Zhu Yao looked towards Xiao Yi at the center. Don't you think so? Xiao Yi gritted his teeth, and a moment later, he spat out a single word. Yes. Zmo frowned, he had a feeling that this matter was not that simple. After pondering for a moment, he said. Junior Marshal Brother Xiao, since you've already returned, it means that you have completely severed your ties with that female practitioner. You definitely shouldn't continue to talk about that heretic practitioner, and even cause Junior Marshal Brother Zidan to misunderstand. Xiao Yi simply lowered his head, and did not reply, as though he had silently agreed to his words. Although the truth is clear now, at this moment, we will not pursue this matter any further. Zmo continued. However, just in case, and to prevent that heretic practitioner from taking the opportunity to take revenge, Junior Marshal Brother Xiao is not allowed to leave the mountain for the next 200 years. This was the best way to handle this matter. Firstly, he was giving Sovereign Feng Yi face, and secondly, he could prevent him from truly having any connections with the heretic practitioner. Do you have any objections? Xiao Yi was silent for a moment, before he cupped his fists and replied. I will obey the sect master's orders. Raising his head, his eyes, however, shifted to Zhu Yao at the back. In an instant, his eyes turned cold, and a hint of hatred flashed past. Zhu Yao's heart trembled. The hell, what's the meaning of his eyes? She was the one who saved his life, hey? Why was it that every time she saved him, she would pull his hatred? ZMO gave the order, and announced the end of the meeting. It was a happy ending, and Zhu Yao was the only one who felt unwell. Feng Yi was the first to walk out. When she passed by Zhu Yao, she threw her a grateful gaze, and only then did Zhu Yao find some comfort. As expected, there were still sensible people in this world. Probably because she had saved Xiao Yi, the high mountain flower of Ancient Hill sect, Feng Yi, had recently become even more friendly with her. Because they were all on the beast-taming mountain, and they were very close to each other. Feng Yi would occasionally come down to chat with her. Just when Little Wimp had entered his rebellious phase, and she did not know what was wrong with old man ZMO, as he pushed all the responsibilities of Ancient Hill sect onto her shoulders. She was so busy that she almost fainted. Now that Feng Yi was here, she finally had an excuse, and did not care anymore. When Feng Yi came looking for her, she was giving lessons to a few little radishes who had just entered the sect. Zimo's explanation was, these were the future of the sect, and as an elder, she had the responsibility of supervising them. Mama's egg, it's not like she was taking in disciples, why the hell was she supervising them? Looking at a group of naive and fearless little radishes circling around you, and because of your reputation, you can't hit them, and you can't scold them, it's really terrifying, alright? Deity, what's your name? Number 1 Radish. Deity, you can fly. Then, is your name Flying Man? Number 2 Radish. But, my dad said that those who can fly are all called birds. Number 3 Radish. Then, is your name Birdman? Number 4 Radish. Zhu Yao squatted down, and pulled the bunch of curious little radishes. Sighing, she explained with a heavy tone. Little friend, Deity's name is not Flying Man, nor Birdman. My name is Superman. That's right, I'm the Superman who saves the world. Oh! Exclamations of enlightenment resounded from the crowd. A light laughter came from afar. The tall mountain flower had come to chat with her. Zhu Yao finally found a reason to escape. She randomly pulled a disciple, handed over the bunch of little radishes, and then ran off while pulling Feng Yi. Children and whatnot, they were too terrifying. How can you deceive those children? Feng Yi sat on a stone chair in the courtyard. How can you say that I'm deceiving them? Zhu Yao poured a cup of tea for herself, and explained with a stern look. I'm teaching them a very important lesson here. Those who speak too much are bound to slip up. Seriously. Feng Yi shook her head, however, she did not continue to refute. She took the tea from her hands, and thanked her. Zhu Yao. It's not for you. All right, she did not have the face to snatch it back either. Hence, she had no choice but to pour herself another cup. Feng Yi seemed to have something to say, as she glanced at her a few times, and then hesitated. Jiang Yu, you. What do you think of me? Feng Yi suddenly asked. What do you mean? Zhu Yao was stunned for a moment. Feng Yi however lowered her head, and secretly glanced at her from the corner of her eyes. As though she had something difficult to say out loud, her face began to redden inch by inch. Zhu Yao suddenly felt a little awkward. What's wrong with you? Why are you acting so weird today? After chatting for so many days, she had already completely treated the other party as her bosom friend. This was the first time she had seen such an expression. Are you willing to form a partner-practitioner relationship with me? Chapter 81. Before Zhu Yao could even take a sip of tea, she sprayed it all out. With his mouth wide open, He looked at Feng Yi, who still had a bashful look, and in an instant, his entire person felt unwell. Sister, don't scare me. You're not willing. Feng Yi's face instantly paled, and there seemed to be glistening tears flashing at the corner of her eyes. She took a step closer. Why? What's wrong with me? Zhu Yao was so frightened that she fiercely jumped, and instantly fell down from the stone chair. Only after a long while did she crawl back up. Sigh. I think you misunderstood. What's so good about me? Why do you like me? Come on, even though she had a male shell, she was a real woman, the straight kind. Feng Yi circled over, and acted as though she was going to help her up, however, she replied firmly. Everything about you is fine. I'll change, alright. Zhu Yao took another huge step back, and felt like crying. Big sis, don't play such an international joke with me, alright? Do you really hate me that much? Feng Yi's face was instantly filled with despair, and the tears at the corner of her eyes fell down in strings. Don't cry. Zhu Yao instantly felt a strong sense of guilt, and she instantly felt that she wasn't human anymore. That's not what I meant. We won't be happy together. Why? Feng Yi's face was filled with complaints, and she completely looked like a little woman who had sunk into her emotions. She no longer had the slightest bit of her cold and noble demeanor. Since you hate me so much, then why did you risk your life to save me so many times? Furthermore, you're always thinking for me. When did I think about you? She admitted that he had saved her before. But where did he think about her at every turn come from? You helped me save my disciple, and every time I came to you for something, you never refused or delayed it. That was because she wanted to slack off. Even, sometimes when I come to look for you late at night, you listen to me patiently. Please. This was the basic conduct of a best friend. Every time her best friend broke up with her love in the modern world, she also liked to call her at 2 in the middle of the night. She did not strangle her. If you don't have me in your heart, why do you treat me like this? Stop. Zhu Yao took in a deep breath, and stopped her from continuing to imagine. Sovereign. I really don't have any improper thoughts about you. Really? You have to believe me. I don't believe you. Feng Yi instantly shattered her hopes. He looked at her with a hurt expression. If not, we belong to the same sect. Why have you never called me martial uncle? Because I'm your junior sister, how could she say that? Why do you deny it? If you feel that the time is not right, I can wait. Feng Yi looked at her without any regrets. But please don't push me away. You won't give me a reason today. I won't believe it. Reason. Damn it, where was she going to find an excuse? She was a man now. Even if she took off her clothes for her to see, she probably wouldn't believe her. Actually. Zhu Yao took a deep breath, and tried her best to squeeze out a very serious expression. I already have someone I like. Feng Yi trembled, as she hurriedly took 2 steps back, and looked at him with an ashen face. When his disciple rushed in, Yu Yan was currently meditating. He sensed his stupid disciple's aura from afar, and in the next instant, he pounced over like a raging bull. She laid in his arms and pretended to cry. Yu Yan stiffened for a moment, as he hesitated on how to throw his disciple out, so that she wouldn't fall so stupidly. Master. I don't want to live anymore. Zhu Yao rubbed her face randomly, attempting to wipe all of her tears and snot onto her master's white robe. She couldn't be the only one feeling conflicted, right? Whoa. Earlier, I heard a pure young girl's heart. But, I was really frightened. She actually wants me to marry her. No, she wants me to marry her. Just as Yu Yan was about to push her hand away, anger rose in his heart. Who is it? Which, unafraid of death, came to snatch his disciple again? That's not important. Zhu Yao felt her head swelling. Say, I merely saved her once, and treated her a little friendly, so how did she fall for me? I don't want to snatch someone else's harem. Although Xiao Yi had a lot of CPs, he did not mind losing one or two. Yu Yan frowned, guessing who the person his disciple was talking about was. He was considering if he should remind the other party not to have any ideas on his own disciple. Master, I really want to change back. My current identity is too fucked up. Only now did I realize that I can no longer see my future. Zhu Yao's snot and tears flowed down her face. If I'm with a girl, then I'm a lesbian. If I'm with a guy, then I'm a lesbian. It seems like I can't walk out of the gay circle no matter what. Yu Yan frowned. What kind of nonsense was this? Master, speak honestly. Zhu Yao fiercely rubbed her face. Zhu Yao fiercely rubbed her face. Do you also feel that my current appearance is especially abnormal, and especially abnormal? Yu Yan glanced at her from head to toe. Her hair that looked like a chicken's nest, her eyes that were swollen like blisters, and her red nose that was constantly sniffing. No matter how he looked at her, she looked like a mess, yet, without a blush on her face, he said. Not bad. Master. As expected of a good Chinese master. So touching. Yu Yan, however, suddenly raised his head, looked outside, and said with a frown. The person you're talking about, is she? Zhu Yao was startled. Turning her head to look, she saw Feng Yi had unknowingly followed them over. Currently, she was standing outside, looking at the two people who were hugging each other with a look of disbelief. The person you like, could it be? A thought flashed in Zhu Yao's mind, and she instantly came up with a plan to eliminate all future troubles. She nodded heavily. That's right. In order to strengthen the effect, she even hugged onto her master's head, and kissed him. The person beneath her instantly stiffened into a stone statue. Feng Yi looked as though she had received a huge blow, and her body swayed. She once again glanced at the two of them, and with sparkling little tears in her eyes, she flew away. Done. Zhu Yao silently gave a yes in her heart, and she actually felt a little sorry for Feng Yi. However, it was better to get the pain over with than to prolong it. Rather than letting the other party continue to have expectations, why not let her wake up as soon as possible? A person as prideful as Feng Yi, if she were to find a regular person, especially a girl, Zhu Yao would definitely not believe her. As the only demigod female practitioner in the cultivation world, naturally, there were no other female practitioners who could compare to her. If it was a man, it would be different, especially a man like her master, who was much stronger than her. Of course, this was all thanks to her master's cooperation. She turned around and gave Yu Yan a big hug. Thank you, master. Now that the matter is settled, I'll be leaving first. Love you. Only then did Zhu Yao return to Beast-Taming Mountain. A certain person, however, still maintained that stiff posture, and did not move for a long while. He subconsciously touched the corner of his lips, and that numb feeling momentarily caused him to be a little at a loss. Even his heart began to beat wildly. Just what was going on? Could it be that his disciple had cast some sort of unique mystic art on him? But his disciple was that stupid, how was that possible? If that was the case, then what kind of mystic art was that, to cause him to have such a strange feeling? And his mind was uncontrollably replaying the scene earlier, as though he was possessed by a demon. However, he did not hate it. He once again touched his lips, and a strange heat was faintly rising from the depths of his heart. Yu Yan recalled everything he had seen and heard in the past 10,000 years, yet, he was still unable to find a reasonable answer. As expected, he had to ask his disciple. Ever since Feng Yi ran away from Jade Forest Mountain in tears that day, Zhu Yao had never seen her again. Zhu Yao reflected on herself for a moment, yet, she still could not figure out where she had given her a hint, which made her feel that she had feelings for her. Although her current avatar was a man, she had always thought that other than when she was interacting with Wang Xuji and her master without any scruples, she did not treat other people any differently. After pondering for a moment, Zhu Yao was certain. Most probably, it was that time in the desolate lands. In order to heal her, he seemed to have stripped off her clothes. In her precognitive dreams, she seemed to have half-heartedly submitted to Xiao Yi because she was healing Xiao Yi's injuries as well. However, this time, it was her. The more Zhu Yao thought about it, the more she felt it was possible. It was no wonder she did not even hesitate for a moment back then, and gave her the water spirit so easily. So it was because of this reason. Big sis Zhu Yao, big sis Zhu Yao. Wang Xuji reached out his hand and waved it in front of Zhu Yao. "Ah. What's wrong with you? Did you hear what I said?" This was already the third time her mind had wandered today. Did something happen? What did you say? Wang Xuji sighed, and then repeated himself. "I said, the sect master's wife is pregnant." "What? Who did it?" Wang Xuji's face darkened. "Ah. I'm sorry, it was a conditioned reflex." Zhu Yao scratched her head awkwardly. "Really? I never expected that your master would still be so heroic at such a young age. Could the word heroic be used in such a manner?" Wang Xuji shook his head, his face was filled with helplessness. "Master told me personally. Most probably, not long from now, I will have a little junior martial brother, or a little junior martial sister." Wang Xuji was really happy. Among the sect master's chamber disciples, he was the youngest. This time, he could finally be a senior martial brother again. And, the higher the cultivation of practitioners, the harder it was for them to have children. For a nascent soul stage practitioner like Old Man Zmo to be able to have children, it was practically harder than winning the lottery. When is she going to give birth? I want to join in the fun as well. It's still early. Wang Xuji said. It's not even 3 months yet, you have to wait until next year. Ah. She only needs to be pregnant for a year. Zhu Yao asked. Wang Xuji strangely glanced at her. Being pregnant for 10 months, that's the norm since ancient times. Ah. Sorry, she was Neza. She had thought that practitioners had long lifespans, so their pregnancy period would be long as well. Xuji, you didn't come looking for me today just to tell me about this, right? 2 days ago, she was still throwing a tantrum, but today, she looked as though nothing had happened. Wang Xuji's expression changed. A moment later, he silently pulled out a stack of books and passed them to her. The things you asked me to organize, I have already done them, so I came to send them over. Chapter 82. Good boy. Zhu Yao satisfyingly received it. When little Wimp wasn't rebellious, he was rather cute. Big sis Zhu Yao. Wang Xuji hesitated to speak, but in the end, he still decided to speak up. I feel, it's best if you don't get too close to Sovereign Feng Yi. After all, she's Xiao Yi's master, Xiao Yi, this person, rest assured. Zhu Yao stroked his head. Even if you were to tie me up right now, I wouldn't dare to get too close to her. Both of them were so scary. She would rather not know them for the rest of her life. However, the metal spirit was still in Xiao Yi's hands, so she had no other choice. That's right, when she thought of the metal spirit, she suddenly remembered that she had to quickly release the wood spirit as well. She had released the water spirit, and the bug on Xiao Yi's face had already faded by so much. However, when she obtained the wood spirit back then, it was not like that. This proved that it was not as simple as snatching the 5 spirits from his hands. Instead, it was to ensure that no one else would make use of the 5 spirits. The wood spirit had been with her for a long time, and it was also very obedient. She was a little reluctant to part with it. In addition, the wood spirit wasn't like the water spirit. It had the entire ocean as its cover, while it was just a small sapling. Once it took root, it probably wouldn't be able to move anymore. Therefore, he had to find a safe place to place it where no one would find it. What place was there that humans couldn't discover and that was suitable for a wood spirit to reside in? That's it. An idea flashed through her mind, and she immediately thought of a good place that no one would go to. Brat, I have something urgent to attend to. I'll be going out for a while. I can't talk to you anymore. Zhu Yao instructed, turned around and walked out. After pondering for a moment, she then turned around and instructed. Oh right, I'll leave the bunch of new brats in the front hall to you. I won't go there today. Big sis Zhu Yao. Before Wang Shuji could even stop her, her figure could no longer be seen. He sighed, resigned to his fate, turned around, and went to the front hall of the main peak. The place Zhu Yao wanted to go to was the Jade Forest Mountain, the place where the wood spirits were settled. She was unable to go there, and she still needed her master's help. Passing through the teleportation formation, they arrived at the peak of Jade Forest Mountain. He saw that familiar figure from afar. He pushed the door open and walked out. He seemed to be preparing to go out as well. Master. Zhu Yao waved her claws. I want to ask for your help. She didn't finish her sentence. Yu Yan had already walked over with a stern expression. Every step he took was especially firm, and he stopped a step away from her. He stared at her face without blinking. Zhu Yao swallowed back the words she was about to say. What happened to Master? Master, why are you? She didn't finish her sentence. Yu Yan suddenly grabbed onto her arm, lowered his head, and planted a kiss on her lips. For a moment, Zhu Yao felt as though she had heard some sort of explosion, as a bunch of garbled characters frantically flashed past her mind. His eyes widened. He looked at the person in front of him in disbelief. This person is definitely not my master. Yu Yan raised his head, furrowed his brows, and muttered to himself. Something's wrong. Why didn't he feel the same as before? Yes, one more time. Thus, he lowered his head again. He aimed at his disciple's mouth and smacked her again. Still not right. Again, thus, ba-ji, and ba-ji. Stop. Zhu Yao, who had finally regained her senses, pushed the person in front of her away. Forget about kissing her, what was the meaning of this? Her teeth were about to be knocked out, you know. Master, what are you doing? Your disciple sells her body, not her skills. Ah pooey. What's wrong with you? Zhu Yao covered her injured mouth, and for the first time in her life, her face turned red. She glared at the man in front of her who was kissing her endlessly. What happened to her master? Was his body taken over? Was he abducted by aliens? Or was he infected with a kissing maniac disease? The hell, how can there be such a disease, hey? Looking at his disciple who suddenly ran a few meters away, Yu Yan was a little unhappy, however, he still replied with a serious look. I want to try. Try. Zhu Yao's mind was in a daze for a moment. Try what? Was he trying to see how strong her mouth was against pressure? I don't have that kind of feeling. What kind of feeling? Yu Yan still had a confused look, as he seriously explained. Yesterday in the house, when you pressed your lips against mine. Yesterday. That time when he acted in front of Feng Yi. Zhu Yao suddenly felt her heart tremble for a moment. Her master couldn't possibly be secretly in love with her, right? Ho ho ho. Ho ho. Ho ho. Zhu Yao felt a strange heat rising from her face, and it was even showing signs of spreading at an extremely fast speed. Why did she feel so embarrassed? This master of hers, who was an all-rounder, was actually secretly in love with her, and he didn't even seem to be aware of it. What should she do? Why did she suddenly feel that they could develop a relationship? No. She had to calm down. She still had to return home, return to her own world. She couldn't casually fall in love. However, even if she returned to the modern era, she would merely be an older, unmarried young woman. Then, why the hell would she return? But, after all, Zhu Yao's heart instantly began to ponder the question of whether she should stay or leave, as an intense debate arose. Wait a minute. Wasn't she thinking about the matter of her master secretly in love with her earlier? Looking at his disciple whose face was already as red as an apple, a certain master felt something stirring in the depths of his heart, as he walked forward step by step. Zhu Yao simply felt that her heart had risen to her throat, and her heart was thumping non-stop. Yu Yan finally stopped in front of her, slowly lowered his head, and reached out his hand, touching her forehead. His disciple wasn't sick, right? It's a little hot, but it's nothing serious. The pink bubbles that filled Zhu Yao's heart and eyes, with a piped sound, were completely extinguished. Ho ho. She just knew that she had expectations for this one-track-minded master of hers. She was really out of her mind. Why are you looking for me? After confirming that the incident back then was just a coincidence, a certain master once again began to return to normal. Zhu Yao silently rolled her eyes. Her heart was filled with resentment, but she had nowhere to vent it out. Recalling the proper matters, she had no choice but to endure it for now. Master, you've been to the desolate lands before? Yu Yan nodded. Those few purple lightning bolts were captured there. That place was extremely unique. Although the air did not contain any 5 elemental spiritual energy, there was the purple extreme heavenly lightning, which carried a powerful lightning spiritual energy. I wish to plant the wood spirit in the desolate lands. Yu Yan looked at her a little strangely, as though he did not understand why she wanted to do this. Zhu Yao had no choice but to tell him about Xiao Yi's changes. Only then did Yu Yan nod. Your thoughts are correct. The desolate lands is indeed the best place to hide the wood spirit. However, Zhu Yao turned around. Could it be that there was still something she had not considered? Have you ever thought that the desolate lands is a land of death, while the wood spirit represents life? Yu Yan said. If my guess is correct, if you plant the wood spirit in the desolate lands, in just 10,000 years, the desolate lands will no longer be the desolate lands, but an oasis. Isn't that great? Zhu Yao smiled. Only when she truly arrived at that place did she realize how terrifying that place was. There was no spiritual energy, no life, only desolation. If she could bring life to that place, it would be a good thing. But if that's the case, 10,000 years later, the desolate lands will most likely become the next Tasioluk. People will no longer be afraid of that world, and the wood spirit will eventually be discovered. Then let the next savior save it. Zhu Yao smiled. She could only help up to this point. When that time comes, the wood spirit can be considered to have saved that world. I hope that the demonic beasts of the desolate lands will know gratitude, and protect the wood spirit from being stolen by outsiders. Yu Yan glanced at her, and his expression sank. She clearly knew that there was another method. And that was to completely destroy the wood spirit. It was formed from spiritual energy in the first place. Even if it died, it would simply turn back into spiritual energy. As long as it was given time, it could still turn into a spirit. However, his disciple would rather spend so much effort than to use this method. She probably couldn't bear it. Yu Yan took a deep breath. Deity practitioners, after living for a long time, had long gotten used to ignoring life. However, only this stupid disciple of his still maintained her original heart. Towards the wood spirit, it was the same towards others as well. She said that the reason why she came to this world was because Xiao Yi had disrupted the balance. However, she clearly had hundreds and thousands of chances to kill Xiao Yi, and the hidden danger would naturally be eliminated. Even now, if she were to ask for his help, he would not even frown, and he would be able to help her eliminate this person. However, she did not, and had never thought of using this method. Her life was most likely her bottom line, right? Zhu Yao released the wood spirit, though it seemed to be very unwilling to leave her, as it stretched out its soft little vines to wrap around her legs, not allowing her to leave. After staying in her divine sense for a long time, it faintly showed signs of taking root, so naturally, it was not too willing to move. Though Zhu Yao was a little unwilling as well, the longer she kept it, the harder it would be for her to let it go. Hardening her heart, she promised it that she would visit it often in the future, and then left. Only demigod stage practitioners could enter the desolate lands. Even if a normal person accidentally entered, the groups of 10th-ranked demonic beasts inside were not to be trifled with. However, this way, she could only wait until she became a demigod, before she could visit the little wood spirit. When she returned, it was already late at night. She had escaped back, and currently, she was basically unable to look straight at her master's face. Recalling what happened in the day, she instantly felt as though she was being teased, and the person in question even had a face of ignorance, causing her to be extremely anxious. Big sis Zhu Yao. Just as she reached the entrance, Wang Shuji walked out. Little wimp. Zhu Yao was shocked. Why are you still here? You left before you even finished speaking. I was worried. Wang Shuji frowned. Did something happen? Zhu Yao's face reddened, and she firmly shook her head. Even if she was beaten to death, she would never tell anyone that she was forcefully kissed. I'm fine. Coo, you should go back and rest first. Oh. Only then did Wang Shuji turn around and leave. He turned to look at Zhu Yao's bad expression. Was she really fine? Of course Zhu Yao wasn't fine. Her entire person wasn't feeling good, alright. Clearly, she was the one who was secretly loved, so why was she feeling so conflicted? No, she had to find a chance to get back at him. Chapter 83. After releasing the wood spirit, Zhu Yao lived a few peaceful days. Zhu Yao did not know if Xiao Yi's bug attribute had weakened, because he had gone into closed-door training, and he had declared that he would not come out until he reached the middle stages of nascent soul. The sect master had only requested for him to not leave Ancient Hill's sect for 200 years, yet, he had locked himself in isolation. He had just formed his nascent soul not too long ago, and if he wanted to reach the middle stages of nascent soul, he would need at least 500 years before he could come out of isolation. The master and disciple both concentrated on staying at the peak. It seemed like not only did Xiao Yi know how to pick up girls, he still had some brains. He knew how to keep a low profile and keep a low profile. At least on the surface, he and Rue Yu had really broken off cleanly. This also earned him a good reputation in the sect. However, not contacting Rue Yu did not mean that he would not contact other girls. Every day, Zhu Yao would be able to see waves after waves of girls. Every day, they would come up with new ways to deliver various types of spiritual herbs and pellets to the mountain peak. Zhu Yao shook her head. She really couldn't understand what these girls were thinking in their hearts. Even idol chasing wasn't this crazy, alright. I really don't know what they are after. Sighing deeply, he shook his head and looked at the peak of the mountain. Suddenly, an evil idea popped up in his mind. It will definitely be very lively. Zhu Yao made a decision in her heart, but she lacked a helper. Hence, she eagerly ran to look for Zidan. He was definitely the best helper. As expected, Zidan's eyes shone as well. That's great. Why don't we go look for Senior Martial Brother Sect Master right now? Just as the two of them were planning to leave, Sect Master ZMO had already come looking for them. Recently, the sect leader was in a good mood. Perhaps it was because he was in high spirits because of happy events. He had been cultivating to the nascent soul realm for almost 1,000 years, but suddenly, he had a successor. His wife was pregnant. Naturally, ZMO was extremely happy. Whenever a person was happy, he would easily go crazy. Therefore, he stopped doing his proper business and became less involved. Whenever he had nothing to do, he would wander around the various peaks and ask anyone he met. Are you a dual cultivator? Did he have a partner? Do you have children? Ha, I have it. ZMO smiled like a chrysanthemum. Zhu Yao's expression darkened. Someone who was about to become a father. Were they all so crazy? Senior brother. Zidan sighed. This is already the third time you've asked me this question. Oh. Did I ask? ZMO stroked his shining white beard. Junior Martial Brother, don't blame me. You know that I'm about to become a father soon, and I have too many things to do. One or two things are bound to be forgotten. You have so many things to do. How do you still have time to stroll around here? Zhu Yao silently retorted. Suddenly, she recalled the pile of miscellaneous tasks he had given her. He couldn't have pushed all of them to her, right? Congratulations, you're going to be a father. Zhu Yao retaliated a little. However, ZMO did not understand at all. He even cheerfully apologized. Thank you, Junior Martial Brother Jiang. Don't worry, you also have a chance. Looks like you won't have a chance. Zhu Yao, what do you mean? Oh right, looking at your anxious faces, where are you going? ZMO asked. Only then did Zidan recall the matter at hand, and once again told ZMO about his thoughts. After hearing that, ZMO nodded. This method can solve the problem once and for all, but are you sure this is true? You don't have to worry about this, senior brother. Zidan patted his fat and guaranteed. I saw what happened on Taming Beast Peak with my own eyes. Only then did ZMO nod. Then it's decided. Tomorrow, I will mention this matter to Senior Martial Ant. However, I will have to trouble Junior Martial Brother to personally make a trip. Naturally, Zidan would not reject. Early in the morning of the second day. After making sufficient preparations, he ascended to the peak of Taming Beast Peak. Although CMO had been neglecting his duties for the past few days, he was still reliable in handling matters. When Zhu Yao arrived, the hall was already filled with mountain lords and elders. As for old man ZMO, with a chrysanthemum-like smile, he persistently explained the ways of raising children to the people present. Just when everyone's ears had grown calluses from listening to him, Zidan returned with a strange expression. How was it? ZMO stepped forward and asked. Zhu Yao could not help but feel a little nervous as well. She couldn't have been rejected, right? Senior Martial Ant Feng Yi agreed. Zidan said. Zhu Yao heaved a sigh of relief. He actually agreed. Why are you frowning for? Since that's the case, then this matter is decided. ZMO turned to look at Hong Cho at the back. Junior Martial's sister Hong Cho, when do you think we should settle this matter? This can be considered a joyous occasion. I will inform Ling Long to prepare when I return. Hong Cho smiled. Good, good, good. ZMO stroked his beard, and his face was filled with wrinkles from his smile. Lowering his head, he calculated. Coincidentally, there's an extremely good day 5 months later. Why don't we hold Junior Marshal Brother Zhao's Pyro Omicron Sigma Tau Iota Kappa ritual at that time? Hong Cho nodded. I will listen to Senior Marshal Brother Sect Master's arrangements. That's right. The idea that Zhu Yao thought of was to have Xiao Yi marry Ling Long. Although she knew he was a stud, he always thought of picking up girls, so she had to take responsibility. Ling Long could be considered to have followed him since young, and was his earliest woman. However, in her dreams, this Ling Long was infatuated with him. However, other than in the beginning, when he sent Ling Long into the Medicine Mountain's inner sect, later on, he did not bring her along to ascend. Even the scenes of her appearing by his side were very few, as though he had forgotten about her existence. Simply because she was a tri-spirit veins holder, and could not keep up with his cheat's pace. Zhu Yao had considered for a moment, before deciding on this candidate. There were so many girls around, and he still wanted to leave after wiping his butt clean. How could it be that simple? When one owed too much, they had to return it eventually. In the cultivation world, there could only be one dual practitioner companion, and unless one died or ascended, they could not be separated. Furthermore, dual practitioner arts were beneficial to one's cultivation, and it could be said that they were improving at the same time. If, after having a companion, he still had a relationship with another woman, then he would be looked down upon by the world. If he was not careful, he might even be mistaken as a heretic practitioner who cultivated and absorbed other people's cultivation. She just did not know how the other women would react if they knew that Xiao Yi was going to take dual practitioner companions. She had a feeling that a huge battle was about to unfold, especially that demigod stage Rui Yu. Just thinking about it made her a little excited. Yet, Xiao Yi could not reject it, because this matter was agreed to by his master. Furthermore, he still had feelings for Ling Long, so he basically could not find an excuse to reject it. Little brother, do you have a grudge with Senior Marshal Aunt Feng Yi? Zidan suddenly popped out. Ah. Zhu Yao was startled for a moment. Zidan continued. When I went to propose, Senior Marshal Aunt Feng Yi was initially very happy. However, the moment I said it was Xiao Yi, her face sank. She even asked me why you weren't the one who went to propose. Cuckoo. Cuckoo. Zhu Yao choked on her tea, and coughed till her face and neck were red. Little brother. Most probably, Sovereign has some misunderstanding towards me. Ho ho. Mommy, Feng Yi couldn't possibly be so happy because she thought he was the one who proposed marriage to her, right? No way. It's best if I hide further away in the future, and not be discovered by her. It would be terrible if he did not get to see Xiao Yi's good show, and instead, Feng Yi's love turned into hatred. The news of Xiao Yi marrying a disciple of the Medicine Mountain, Ling Long, quickly spread in Ancient Hill sect. As Zhu Yao had expected, Xiao Yi did not express any objections, but he was not too enthusiastic either. There were still 5 months before the wedding. He used closed-door training as an excuse, and most of the matters were arranged by the Medicine Mountain. However, Zhu Yao was still unable to witness their wedding, because the sect master's wife was about to give birth. She was dragged to the Sword Mountain by Wang Shuji early in the morning, and as they walked, he excitedly told her this piece of news. Although Zhu Yao was extremely resentful towards CMO for pushing a pile of matters onto her, she was still rather happy for him since he had a successor. ZMO was the sect master, and adding that he had good relations with others, seemingly the moment he heard the news of his wife giving birth, all the nascent soul practitioners in the sect swarmed to the main mountain. When Zhu Yao arrived at the small house in the side hall, she was shocked by the densely packed people inside. Some of them were sitting, some were standing, and only old man Zmo was walking back and forth in the middle of the house, looking especially conspicuous. After a while, he casually pulled someone over and asked, "Will my wife be fine? Wasn't she supposed to be pregnant for 10 months? Why is it brought forward by a month? Just how long do we have to wait? Can't we go in and take a look now? Why isn't there any sound at all? I could still hear it earlier. Do you think she's giving birth to a boy or a girl? Will there be any danger? Can I go and help? Will nothing happen?" The face of the person who was grabbed darkened. Senior martial brother, sister-in-law is, after all, a nascent soul practitioner, she will be fine. Also, if you use any more strength, something is going to happen to my hand. Only then did Zmo let go of his hand, and continued to walk around the house. After going back and forth a few dozen times, he once again asked what he said earlier. So this old man still had the potential to be a chatterbox. Zhu Yao was speechless, and hurriedly found a place to sit, to prevent herself from being grabbed by the overly anxious Zmo. Zhu Yao had always felt that a woman giving birth to a child was a very sacred, yet a little cruel matter. After all, as a mother, she had to experience that kind of pain. However, the miraculous thing was, there was not the slightest bit of movement in the house. However, after pondering for a moment, she understood. After all, he was a nascent soul practitioner. If he were to experience the pain of dying like a mortal, that would be too embarrassing. Most probably, he had a special method to allow the child to be born safely. After all, she had never heard of any practitioner who had a child dying from a difficult birth. After sitting in the house for less than an hour, the cries of a child could finally be heard from the house. Among the quietly waiting crowd, the cries seemed especially loud and clear. Everyone's faces revealed smiles, as they congratulated Zmo one after another. Old man Zmo was smiling to the point where he could not even close his mouth. A moment later, the door opened, and the person who came out was the sect master's wife. She was even carrying a baby in her hands. The crowd once again congratulated her, and Zhu Yao curiously moved closer to look at the child as well. It was finally born. She wondered if it was a male bug or a female bug. Zhu Yao, who clearly saw the baby's face, "Why the hell is it a bug?" Zhu Yao looked at the 3 gray letters imprinted on the little lump's face, and in an instant, she even had the thought of dying. The smile that she had put on earlier was still frozen on her face. Zhu Yao was so irritated that she wanted to flip the table, and she was already cursing in her heart. Wasn't it said that only Xiao Yi was a bug? Why was a child who had just been born a bug as well? Can someone explain this? Chapter 84. Junior Martial Brother Jiang, Junior Martial Brother Jiang. Zhu Yao was suddenly pushed by the person next to her, and only then did she regain her senses. "Aw. What aw? It's your turn, hurry and take it out." Zhu Yao was startled, and asked reflexively. "Take what out?" Zidan laughed, patted on his shoulder, and teased. "You couldn't have left in such a hurry that you forgot to bring a greeting gift for your little niece, right?" Only then did Zhu Yao realize, every single person present, had either taken out a mystic artifact or a spiritual pellet, and handed it to the child's mother, as a greeting gift. Even Wang Xuji had handed over a spiritual sword. Except for her. Zhu Yao was embarrassed. She really did not know she had to give gifts. She turned to look at the baby girl who was still being carried in someone's embrace, and the 3 letters on her face still made her feel pain. Suddenly, she had an idea. She turned to look at Zmo, and said, Ho ho, Senior Marshal brother, I really forgot to bring a gift. However, the moment I saw this little niece, I especially like her. Why don't I take her in as my disciple? No matter what kind of bug this child was, she was still a newborn baby. The reason why Xiao Yi took away the 5 spirits, causing the world to end, was because of his experiences when he was young, which caused his 3 views to be distorted, and he could not change them. However, this child was still young. She could completely guide her from a young age, and make her become a kind person. This. ZMO was a little hesitant. You sure have thought it through. Hong Cho at the side suddenly interrupted, and lightly snorted. You don't even have a gift, and you still want to kidnap my daughter. Senior Marshal brother, don't listen to him. I see that your daughter and I are more compatible, why don't you become my disciple? Zhu Yao turned to glare at her, you evil lolicon. Hong Cho returned her glare, a miser who did not even bring a gift. ZMO looked back and forth at the 2 people who were determined to win, and was in a dilemma. He did not plan to let his daughter take him as her master. Furthermore, he and his wife were both nascent soul practitioners, why did his daughter have to take someone else as her master? In the end, ZMO could only give an excuse, saying that the child was still young, and that they could talk about it after she grew older, chasing the 2 back. After returning, Zhu Yao, however, could not calm down. She had yet to deal with Xiao Yi, and now, another one popped out. There were so many loopholes, how could she fill them all? After that day, Zhu Yao went to the Sword Mountain to visit that baby girl a few more times. Although she would still encounter Hong Cho, this lolicon, every single time, she had confirmed, that child's face really had the exact same bug word as Xiao Yi's written on it. The difference was, in the past, she had seen it more deeply on Xiao Yi's body. And there was no yellow exclamation mark above the little girl's head. Did that mean that there was still room for redemption? She believes that no one is born bad. But the key was how to salvage the situation. Big sis Zhu Yao, are you there? Little Wimp's voice could be heard from afar. When she opened the door, he came in with a large stack of pamphlets. After knowing that she wanted to take his daughter as her disciple, ZMO felt even more justified in enslaving her. Thus, it was even more logical for her to enslave little Wimp. Wang Shuji seemed to be born to do big things. She had a headache just looking at all the big and small matters between the various peaks, but he was able to handle them properly. He had to give him a thumbs up for this. Why did you come here in the middle of the night? Zhu Yao took the booklet from his hands, and placed it on the table. You can just send it over tomorrow. I was afraid that you would be in a hurry to get it. The child smiled. With great familiarity, he poured a cup of tea for her, and then poured a cup for himself. Big sis Zhu Yao, have you just returned from the Sword Mountain? Yes. He shook his head. Big sis Zhu Yao, just give up. Master only had this one precious daughter after so many years, and Master's wife even risked her cultivation to give birth to little Junior Marshal's sister. How could he possibly let his own daughter take someone else as her master? Zhu Yao rolled her eyes at him. What did little Wimp know? She didn't want to be a babysitter. Wasn't there nothing she could do? And, what she was even more worried about was, after seeing Xiao Yi's bug back then. That was why he had that precognitive dream. Even though he was sleeping every night, he was still able to feel it. However, he couldn't think of anything about the sect leader's daughter. Seeing that she was still unwilling to give up, Wang Shuji sighed. Drinking a mouthful of tea, he recalled something and asked. Oh right, big sis Zhu Yao, why did you deactivate all of the restrictive formations at the entrance? Is there something wrong? Restriction. I didn't. Zhu Yao was startled, as she exchanged glances with him. Then who was the one who deactivated it? Her heart clenched. Just as she was about to stand up and take a look, she saw a cloud of black smoke flying towards them. Zhu Yao hurriedly activated a defensive formation, however, she was still a step late, and was struck by the black smoke. Wang Shuji fainted instantly. Little wimp. She grew anxious. Just as she was about to circulate her energy, she felt a pain in her chest. The mystic energy in her entire body seemed to have been sealed, and she was unable to use it. We meet again. A sinister female voice resounded next to her ears, and she was struck by a palm on her back. In the next instant, she fainted. It was Rui Yu. When Zhu Yao woke up, she was in a dusky place. Her 4 limbs were bound by chains that were engraved with talismans, and she was hung above a gigantic black pond. That pond was exactly the same as the one she saw in the underground city back then, the one used to refine demonic beasts. The only difference was, the thing in the pond back then was the remains of demonic beasts, while the thing floating in the pond now were human bones. Zhu Yao instantly felt a chill run down her spine. Just as she was about to struggle, she realized that the mystic energy in her entire body was sealed, and even her 4 limbs were strangely stiff. It seemed like someone had cast a spell on her. Yo, it seems like you're awake. Rui Yu suddenly appeared in front of her. Standing in midair, her smile was extremely bewitching. She pointed to the surroundings and said, "This is the cage I specially set up for you. How about it? It's you. Rui Yu. Why did she want to capture her? It seems like you still remember me. Why did you capture me?" Rui Yu smiled. Suddenly, she raised her hand and gave her a slap. "Why? You schemed against my Xiao Lang in such a manner, shouldn't I capture you?" Schemed? She was talking about matchmaking for Xiao Yi. I helped him find a good marriage, how can you say that I schemed against him? The hell, she captured the wrong person, right? If she had to capture someone, she should capture Xiao Yi instead. Rui Yu's expression turned cold, as she raised her hand and gave her another slap. Don't play tricks with me, I won't believe you. I have never doubted Xiao Lang's feelings for me. If you know what's good for you, then take out your treasure. Otherwise. Zhu Yao was startled. What treasure? Rui Yu frowned, and reached out her hand to cast an art. Zhu Yao instantly felt as though she was placed in a blazing inferno, and her entire body began to twitch from the pain. It's fine if you don't speak. Rui Yu coldly laughed. In any case, I have all the time in the world to make you speak. After saying that, she disappeared, while Zhu Yao fainted from the pain. Ever since then, she would come and ask this question every single day. If she could not get an answer, she would torture her. Sometimes she would burn her, sometimes she would be electrocuted, and sometimes she would be frozen. Every single day, there would be no repetition. Yet, her cultivation was completely suppressed, and she was completely unable to resist. If not because she had once experienced the pain of having her Azoth core shattered, she would have long gone insane from the torture. When Rui Yu appeared in front of her for the 11th time, and was about to torture her, she finally could not help but curse out. Xiao Yi, you motherfucking coward. You have the guts to capture me, but don't you have the guts to come out and see me? Rui Yu paused for a moment, a hint of panic flashed past her face, but she immediately recovered. What nonsense are you spouting? I'm the one who captured you, what does this have to do with him? Do you think I'm a motherfucking idiot? Zhu Yao rolled her eyes. With just a heretic practitioner like you, without any informants, you dare to barge into Ancient Hill sect alone? In these 10 days, she finally understood why the formation in her courtyard would close by itself, and coincidentally, Rui Yu would suddenly appear in her room. You sure are smart. A white figure appeared next to Ruiyu. As expected, it was Xiao Yi. It's no wonder you're able to scheme against me. Are you crazy? What did I scheme against you? Zhu Yao really wanted to curse out. She had saved him time and time again, how did it turn into schemes? Stop pretending. Xiao Yi's expression turned cold, and said with emphasis on every single word. Junior. Marshall. Aunt. Zhu. Yao. Zhu Yao was startled. The hell, how did he know? Do you find it strange that I know? Xiao Yi coldly snorted. If I had not heard Wang Shuji call out your name by chance, I really would not have known that you're actually Sovereign Yu Yan's personal succeeding disciple, Zhu Yao, who should have died 100 years ago. Zhu Yao sank into silence. If she had known, she would not have told Little Wimp the truth. Although he would always call her elder in front of outsiders, in private, he had always called her Big Sis Zhu Yao. But just when did Xiao Yi hear it? The matter of you taking over my body isn't related to me in the first place, but you shouldn't have schemed against me time and time again. Stop. Zhu Yao became even more confused the more she heard. I'm heavy. What does my taking over have to do with scheming against you? The hatred in Xiao Yi's eyes sank even deeper. Do you think I don't know how you despicably snatched the wood spirit and water spirit from my hands? Zhu Yao frowned. As expected, he already knew about the matter regarding the wood spirit and water spirit. However, wait a minute, snatched from your hands. Where did these words come from? Do you think you can do it flawlessly? Xiao Yi's face was filled with indignation. That old man who saved me from the secret realm had long told me about your matter. However, my cultivation back then was shallow, so I did not know that the girl was actually transformed by you as well. Then did he tell you that I was the one who suppressed your Azoth Core's rampage back then? Otherwise, you would have long been stuffed to death by your Azoth Core. Zhu Yao instantly chuckled. Also, you said that I snatched them from your hands. Did the wood spirit and water spirit land in your hands? Or was your name written on them? Xiao Yi was speechless for a moment, and then said angrily from embarrassment. Stop quibbling. In any case, I won't let you go no matter what. Just who's quibbling? Xiao Yi, do you even have a brain? Do you even know how to think normally? Shut up. Xiao Yi once again used torture on her to stop her from speaking. There's no point in speaking anymore. Today, if you don't hand over the wood spirit, water spirit, and the mystic treasure you took over, I will definitely not let you go. Chapter 85. Most probably, ever since Xiao Yi found out about the existence of the wood spirit, he had never given up on the wood spirit. Although he had already washed away his wood spirit root, he still stubbornly wanted to possess it. Did he already know her identity? Was that why he did not have any objections when she suggested that he and Linglong become dual cultivators? However, he secretly contacted Ruiyu. No, it was possible that from the moment he returned to the sect, he had already planned everything. He wanted to obtain the water spirit, but accidentally discovered that the wood spirit was also in her hands. That was why he had captured her, wanting to obtain a double share. However, she had clearly released the water spirit, and Feng Yi had seen it with her own eyes as well. Looking at Xiao Yi's expression, he thought that it was still in her hands. Could it be that she did not tell Xiao Yi about this matter? Don't expect anyone to come and save you. What did he mean? Xiao Yi coldly laughed. On the day you disappeared, several heretic practitioners barged into Ancient Hill's sect. But the strange thing is that the Taming Beast Peak's elder Jiang Yu is missing. What do you think everyone will think? Zhu Yao widened her eyes. The hell, this little ingrate. He wanted to frame her for colluding with heretical cultivators. So, no one will come to save you. Even if there is, it will be to kill you, a traitor who colluded with evil cultivators. Damn, I really want to bite him to death. Rueyu grabbed her hair and threatened, if you know what's good for you, hand over the thing, and I'll give you a quick death. I've already released the water spirit and wood spirit. If you don't believe me, feel free to ask your master. She saw it with her own eyes. Xiao Yi was startled, and was a little surprised. After pondering for a moment, as though he believed her words, he changed the topic and asked. What about the magic treasure you possessed? Zhu Yao suddenly laughed out. This was snatched from you as well. What high-sounding words, in the end, wasn't it just to snatch things? Xiao Yi had always considered himself as a righteous person. Even if he was in the same group as Rueyu, he still felt that what he did was right and confident. It was a deliberate trap. He had captured her and brought her here, and had even claimed that the wood and water spirits were his, all in the name of getting them back. Then how was he going to explain why he kept asking her about possession? As expected, a hint of embarrassment flashed past Xiao Yi's face, however, with a heavy flick of his sleeves, he left. Was he feeling guilty? He was obviously a vile person, but he liked to use the name of a gentleman. Just as Xu Yao was about to mock him a little. However, the pain in her body suddenly intensified. She felt as if the blood vessels in her body were about to explode, and she couldn't help but spit out a few mouthfuls of blood. As I said, we have patience. Rueyu chuckled. Zhu Yao might as well close her eyes and pretend to be dead. In any case, it wasn't her first time dying. She was used to it. Kill me if you dare. Rueyu and Xiao Yi tortured her for another 3 days. Every single time, she felt that she was about to die, however, when she opened her eyes, she was still here. Rueyu was simply a demon. She seemed to be especially good at this kind of torture. She had practiced it hundreds and thousands of times in advance. It seemed like she had done this kind of abuse many times. If you don't want to suffer, then tell me honestly what magic treasure you used to possess me. And I can even retain my cultivation. Rueyu said in a strange tone, don't even think about dying. We know that you have a treasure to possess. To tell you the truth, there's a soul-locking curse on this chain. Even if you die, your soul won't be able to break free. Damn, how could these two people be so ruthless? Did he want her soul to scatter? That's why you'd better tell me as soon as possible. Otherwise, you won't be able to take it. But the little brother you caught with you is. He was captured together with her, little wimp. Zhu Yao suddenly widened her eyes. What did you do to him? Oh, it seems like he's quite important to you. Rueyu laughed, if you don't want him to die, then hurry up and tell me honestly. Zhu Yao clenched her fists, and wished that she could scratch her face. She was both angry and worried. It was one thing for them to capture her, but why didn't they let little wimp off as well? He couldn't reincarnate. Taking a deep breath, Zhu Yao told herself to calm down. A moment later, she said. I do indeed have a god's artifact. It was given to me by my master. But this divine artifact has recognized its master, so it's useless even if you take it. It was actually a divine artifact. Rueyu's eyes lit up. Even Xiao Yi came out as well. Suppressing the excitement in the depths of his heart, he said. A god's artifact indeed recognizes a master. Since your master was able to give it to you, naturally, he has a way to make it recognize another master, right? Zhu Yao did not say anything. Xiao Yi, however, thought that she had silently agreed, and once again used Wang Shuji to threaten her. Only then did Zhu Yao mention. Let me down, and let me see Wang Shuji. Otherwise, I won't give it to you. No way. Rueyu rejected. Then at the very least, you can let me down to take a breather, right? After I go down, I can first pass the divine artifact to you, and then, you can bring me to see Wang Shuji. Rue Yu and Xiao Yi exchanged glances. After hesitating for a moment, they cast an art, and released the chains that were binding her. The moment Zhu Yao landed on the ground, she realized how heavy the torture that was imposed on her body was. She had always underestimated Xiao Yi, and thought that although his 3 views were a little crooked, at the very least, he still had a bottom line. As it turned out, his bottom line had long been crooked beyond recognition, and was completely distorted. He had become a self-centered person who would do anything to achieve his goals. The word bug on his face had already become very faint. Zhu Yao dared to say that, without the metal spirit, he would no longer be a bug with heaven-defying luck. Where's the divine artifact? Xiao Yi anxiously asked. Zhu Yao smiled at him, and only then did she take a deep breath. Gathering all of the strength in her body, she shouted out. Open sesame. A loud roar resounded. A white flash flew in, and when it landed, it turned into a gigantic demonic beast. Rue Yu and Xiao Yi's expressions changed. 9th-ranked demonic beast. Xiao Yi was startled. I never expected that you actually still have the strength to summon a contracted spiritual beast. Contracted spiritual beasts had a special method of communication with their masters, and when necessary, they could forcefully summon them. However, the place where she was imprisoned back then, had a formation that blocked off auras, which was why she requested to come out. Do you think that a mere 9th-ranked demonic beast can do anything to the 2 of us? No, this isn't 9th-ranked. Rue Yu's expression was a little pale, as she stared fixedly at the demonic beast in front of her. This demonic beast is 11th ranked. Correct. Sesame proudly swung its tail and replied. Then, with a loud roar, it pounced towards the 2 people whose faces had instantly turned green. Oh roar, it chased after the 2 of them and bit fiercely. The powerful pressure of the demonic beast was even pressing towards the 2 of them as though it was playing. Although Rue Yu was a demigod stage practitioner, after all, she was still an early stage demigod stage practitioner. She was basically unable to defeat a demonic beast that was equivalent to an ascendant. Even with Xiao Yi by her side, she could only barely defend against it. Don't you want to save Wang Shuji? Seeing that they were already in a disadvantageous position, Xiao Yi loudly said to Zhu Yao. Zhu Yao really wanted to spit on his face. At a time like this, he still did not forget to threaten her. Just how stupid was she in their eyes? Even if I let you go, you 2 won't tell me. So I might as well go look for him myself. Seeing that she did not fall for his trap, Xiao Yi's expression darkened, and then, he suddenly laughed out loud. Do you think you'll still be able to see him? Zhu Yao was startled. What do you mean? You view that brat with great importance, right? Xiao Yi smiled. Ever since we entered the sect, you've been standing up for him in everything. But unfortunately, no matter how much you protect him, it's useless. He's long dead. On the day I captured you. Zhu Yao simply felt a buzzing sound in her mind, as though something that was tightly squeezed had snapped. Her vision instantly turned blurry. A sentence repeatedly played in her mind. Little Wimp is dead. Little Wimp is dead. Little Wimp, how could he possibly be dead? Wasn't he the one who had always made her worry? No, this wasn't real. You're lying. We dared to head to Ancient Hill's sect to capture you, so why would we leave him alive? No. Zhu Yao muttered these words. However, the more she muttered, the slimmer her hope became. She muttered these words 1,000 times, but in the depths of her heart, there were 10,000 voices reminding her of the truth. A pain that was even more severe than torture instantly spread throughout her entire body. Tears uncontrollably flowed out, and in front of her eyes was Little Wimp's figure. He had a tsundere look when he was 10 years old, as though he would definitely not marry her. A 15-year-old youth, as though he would protect her. After forming his Azoth core, as though he would avenge her. And on the final day, when he handed her a cup of tea. She clearly remembered it so clearly. She even remembered it clearly when Dr. Wong told her. Today, there's a deity choosing a disciple in town. I wish to trouble you to bring this brat of mine over. She had clearly promised Dr. Wong that she would look after Little Wimp. Why was he gone? He was such a young child. She had watched him grow up and protected him. He was sensible and obedient. Even she couldn't bear to scold or beat him. Why was he gone just like that? Why? Zhu Yao simply felt an abnormal rage surging in the depths of her heart, as though something was about to explode. In the depths of her heart, there was only a single thought. What use was there in saving a world like this? In an instant, the mountains shook and the earth shook. The entire prison began to collapse inch by inch, turning into a gigantic crater. The initially bright world instantly lost all light. As though doomsday had arrived, birds and beasts scurried away. Bolts of purple heavenly lightning bolts fiercely struck the ground, and the clouds began to surge. Moss. Mistress. Sesame was shocked by this abnormal movement as well. The innate instinct of a demonic beast made it feel that something huge had happened. A terrifying aura of death was currently enveloping the entire world. It turned to look at the ground at the side, only to see Zhu Yao sitting there blankly, as though she had lost consciousness. Her entire body was surrounded by a large amount of spiritual energy. However, it was not the lightning spiritual energy required by her spirit vein, but the chaotic spiritual energy formed by the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and warrior. And Zhu Yao was currently at the very center of the chaos. Moss. Mistress. She stood where she was, and did not dare to move. This phenomenon was as though the 5 elements spiritual energy was going berserk at the same time. Rue Yu was shocked by this strange phenomenon as well. Initially, the reason why they mentioned Wang Shuji's death was to mess up Zhu Yao's emotions and cut off her connection with the demonic beasts. But right now, just what in the world was? Chapter 86. Zhu Yao still maintained that dazed attitude, as though she could no longer hear anything. In the surroundings, however, more and more objects were being dragged into this violent commotion, and it looked like it was going to be irreversible. A clear and cold voice suddenly sounded from the horizon. Yu Wang. Zhu Yao, who was in a daze, was startled for a moment. All of the anomalies stopped in an instant. She turned her head blankly and looked at the white-robed figure that seemed to be walking over step by step from the horizon. Bit by bit, his figure was imprinted in her eyes, until that person raised his hand and gently pressed it on her head. Moss, as though a broken piece was suddenly reconnected, tears poured down, drop by drop. Yu Yen squatted down, hugged her into his embrace, and said with a sunken voice, "Don't cry." Only then did Zhu Yao, as though she was reminded, hugged onto his neck, and wailed loudly. Using her loudest voice, she wailed with all her might. It was as though she was about to cry all the tears in her life. Little Wimp. Little Wimp, I know, I know. Yu Yen stroked her head, and used the softest voice he had ever used in his life. I don't want to kill people. I've never thought about it. In my place, since young, our teachers have taught us to be kind, courageous, and to be a good person. Amen, I believe you. But I can't help it. I want to destroy everything, everything. Be obedient. You're tired, sleep. Yu Yan raised his head, and looked toward Sesame not far away. It understood his intentions, and in a flash, it entered Zhu Yao's divine sense. Master, I'm so sad. Her voice sank, as though she was extremely tired. Only then did he lift her arm, and circulate his spiritual energy. He erased the talisman engraved on it. Sleep, Master will wake you up. Zhu Yao simply felt a wave of dizziness, and her vision darkened. In the next moment, she saw that familiar conversation window. Zhu Yao was stunned for a long while, and simply felt that her mind was blank. After a long while, she finally sighed. So she had already died a long time ago. That's true. She was someone who was afraid of pain, so how could she endure so many days of cruel torture? She should have been tortured to death a few days ago. However, in order to prevent her from using that so-called God's artifact, Xiao Yi and the others once again used it to take over her body. They forcefully sealed her soul into her body. I can't come out. But they didn't know that she had never stolen someone else's body. Although they didn't know the reason, every time she was reborn, there was no original owner. It was like a human body that appeared out of thin air. Zhu Yao looked at the conversation window. She did not know if it knew that she was in a bad mood, as the words on it were not as annoying as the previous 2 times. It was just a simple sentence. Would you like to reincarnate? There was only one choice, yes. Taking a deep breath, Zhu Yao felt as though she was about to suffocate from the dense sorrow in the depths of her heart. After a while, she said hesitantly, I feel very uncomfortable. I want to rest for a while. Is that okay? The dialogue box paused. However, they did not crazily flood the screen the moment they received her rebellious emotions as usual. Instead, he shook it, and the words on it disappeared. It was replaced with a simple word. Okay. Thank you. She thanked him and the dialogue box disappeared. The scene before his eyes changed to the scene after her death. She looked at him numbly. When Xiao Yi saw that the matter had been exposed, naturally, he wanted to run. Yu Yan froze the 2 of them where they stood. Yet, Feng Yi appeared at this moment. Zhu Yao thought that she was here to save her disciple. However, she was looking straight at the corpse in Yu Yan's hands, her eyes were filled with sorrow. In the next instant, she actually raised her hand and slammed it towards Xiao Yi. Naturally, he did not have any strength to resist. Master. Xiao Yi's face was filled with disbelief. It was as though he had never expected that his master whom he had always respected and loved would make a move on him. You betrayed your sect, and harmed your fellow disciples. You even colluded with heretic practitioners. From today onwards, you are no longer my, Feng Yi's, disciple. Feng Yi then waved her hand, dispelling the personal succeeding disciple mark on his forehead, and then, forcefully extracted the metal spirit in his body. They forced me. Xiao Yi gritted his teeth. He wanted to resist, however, he was firmly pressed onto the ground by Yu Yan's pressure. Adding that during the chaos earlier, the metal spirit had long strangely wanted to charge out of his body. Currently, it was easily extracted. The red metal spirit struggled a few times in Feng Yi's hands, as though it wanted to return to Xiao Yi's body. Feng Yi coldly laughed. The metal spirit was originally a pure golden color, yet, in your hands, it turned into a demonic red color. Only a person with a devilish nature would be able to nurture such a metal spirit. Was this also forced by others? Xiao Yi was startled, as though he had just realized this problem. He had always thought that the metal spirit's abnormal color was because it had sucked his blood and recognized him as its master. Devilish nature. How could he possibly have devilish nature? Feng Yi no longer bothered with him, and cupped her hands towards Yu Yan. Senior Marshal Uncle Yu Yan, he killed his fellow disciples, and has committed a heinous crime. Now, I will hand him and the metal spirit over to Senior Marshal Uncle for you to deal with. Yu Yan reached out his hand to receive the metal spirit in her hands. Frowning, he circulated his spiritual energy and forcefully clenched it. Lightning flashed in his hands, and in an instant, the metal spirit turned into countless golden specks of light and disappeared. A demonized metal spirit could not be left in the world. Let it return to normal metal spiritual energy then. The moment the metal spirit disappeared, the word bug on Xiao Yi's face instantly disappeared without a trace as well. After Yu Yan dealt with the metal spirit, he turned to look at Xiao Yi, and his expression instantly turned as cold as ice. Taking a deep breath, as though he was forcefully suppressing the rage in his heart, he raised his hand and heavily struck a ray of white light into Xiao Yi's body. Xiao Yi simply felt the spiritual energy in his body had completely dispersed, and he could no longer gather any more. I have already destroyed his spirit vein and dantian. From now on, there's no possibility of him ever cultivating again. That stupid disciple of his had always been soft-hearted, and could not bear to kill. If he were to kill him now, when she regained her senses, she would most probably regret it. As for that heretic practitioner, similarly disperse his cultivation, and hand him over to ZMO to deal with. After saying that, he once again glanced at Zhu Yao, who was no longer breathing in his embrace, and in a flash, his figure disappeared from where he stood. Zhu Yao took a deep breath. Xiao Yi was no longer a bug, and her mission was completed as well. However, in her heart, she could not feel happy at all. Suddenly, the scenery in front of her changed again, and a stretch of green mountains and clear waters appeared. At the foot of the mountain, there was even a farm that she was rather familiar with. Wasn't this the little mountain village she came from when she first crossed over? Stop, you stinky brat. Let's see where you can run to now. A man waved a small wooden stick and charged out of the house, chasing after a child who was running all over the field. That was Dr. Wang. Zhu Yao was startled. Then the one he was chasing after was, she looked at that child, and as expected, it was the young Wang Shuji. Zhu Yao excitedly wanted to step forward and greet him, however, she recalled that she was only in a spiritual state, and they were basically unable to see her. She could only stand at the side and watch. A moment later, the scenery changed. She watched as that running youth grew up bit by bit and turned into a big boy. He was no longer mischievous, and was instead seriously learning medical skills from Dr. Wang. Wait, Wang Shuji had followed her to cultivate when he was 10, so why was he learning medical skills? Could it be that this was his original path of life? Zhu Yao hurriedly ran back to Widow Zhu's house to take a look. As expected, she did not have a daughter, and was all alone. The scenery in front of her changed again. Wang Shuji's medical skills slowly gained some achievements, and he became famous far and wide. Many people came to seek him for treatment. In a few more years, he married a wife, and his family was beautiful. Zhu Yao was happy for him as well. However, good times did not last long. His personality was too stubborn, and he offended the nobles. He quarreled with his wife. The scenery changed again. He was lying on a sickbed, but no one was by his side. Not even his wife's figure could be seen. After looking around, she saw his wife packing her things, and without even turning back, she walked out of the house. And Wang Shuji, who crawled up from the bed, was currently looking at his wife from afar, and sighed. Then, she saw that Wang Shuji, who was lying on the bed, was no longer breathing. He was only 36 years old. Was this Wang Shuji's original path of life? The scenery in front of her changed again, and she arrived at a dark and terrifying place. Zhu Yao was startled for a moment, only to see translucent ghost-like people currently crossing the bridge. Was this the legendary netherworld? Zhu Yao's guess was right. In the next moment, she saw Wang Shuji's ghost. Similarly, no matter how she shouted, he could not hear her. She simply crossed the bridge blankly. Then, she saw a crying baby boy. This was reincarnation. Zhu Yao inspected her surroundings. Looking at the level of luxury, he should be from a family with a pretty good background. A moment later, a gorgeous woman came over, carried him up, and softly coaxed him. The woman felt that there was also a man, who was currently looking at his wife and child with an affectionate expression. With a single glance, one could tell that this was a beautiful family. Zhu Yao quietly stood for a good while and deeply sighed. She did not know what to say. Was the person who made her transmigrate to this place telling her all of this so that she could let go of her past? But so what? Even if he could only live for 36 years, after all, she had already changed his life. In the end, he died because of her. To him, this was the truth. How could she use something that had never happened to forgive something that had already happened? The people of this world always talked about deity cultivation. But so what if he cultivated? Wasn't he just as greedy, arrogant, and even crueler than ordinary people? She once again lowered her head to look at the baby in the cradle, who completely did not look like Wang Shuji at all. She did not know why, but she suddenly felt a surge of sadness. So what if he reincarnated? Wang Shuji was just Wang Shuji. Even if he reincarnated, even if he looked exactly the same when he grew up, he would no longer be the little wimp of the past. She had always disagreed with bullshit like 3 lives and 3 worlds, or reincarnation. Their experiences were different, and their feelings were different, so how could they be considered the same person? That reincarnation conversation window once again appeared in front of her. She knew that she no longer had time, as there was still a bug in the cultivation world waiting for her. However, she did not have the slightest bit of motivation. Taking a deep breath, she tapped on that yes. Closing her eyes, she awaited this reincarnation. The moment she closed her eyes, a row of red words appeared on the screen. Target has encountered a major emotional problem. Activating emergency response measures. Chapter 87. When Zhu Yao woke up, she was a little dizzy, and felt as though the entire world was shaking. It took her a long time to get used to it. His mind went blank for a while before he recovered. Recalling her death this time, it was too tragic. She was definitely tortured to death by Rue Yu. Ever since she transmigrated and had the golden finger of rebirth, she had never been afraid of anything. After all, he wasn't even afraid of death, so what was there for her to be afraid of? However, she had forgotten that this was a world of cultivation. It was easy for a person to die, but it was even easier to make one's life a living hell. She didn't expect that there would be a spell like soul lock in this world. She was hung in a half-dead state, and even though her body was dead, her soul still remained in that body. Those few days were like hell. Now that she thought about it, although it was a little blurry, it still made her scalp tingle. Even she herself had to admire her righteous worldview. She didn't have the thought of destroying the world. If not for her master discovering her abnormality in time, and dispelling the soul-locking curse on her body, she herself would not even know that she had died. If this were to continue, she would most likely be tortured to insanity by Xiao Yi and Rue Yu. Probably because the experience this time was too terrifying. During that period of time, her entire being was in a daze. She faintly remembered that after her master dispelled her curse, Feng Yi appeared as well, and she even forced out Xiao Yi's metal spirit, crippling his cultivation. In that case, the bug, Xiao Yi, could be considered to have been completely dealt with. At that moment, Zhu Yao felt as though the great calamity had already passed, and there would definitely be good fortune after. Thinking about it this way, her entire being became spirited. Zhu Yao shook her head, and began to inspect her surroundings. She realized that this place seemed to be a wilderness. The vegetation here was extremely flourishing, and every single weed was even taller than her. The sound of flowing water could be faintly heard in front of him. Zhu Yao could not wait to head to the water's edge to take a look, hence, she leapt forward with all her might. Wait, why did she jump? Suddenly having a bad premonition, Zhu Yao slowly turned her head around. What he saw was simply unbelievable. No, there must be something wrong with the way she turned her head. Let's switch sides. She turned her head to the other side for the second time. Twisting back, the third time. The fourth time, damn it, who can explain to me what's going on with that slender tail? Why are they covered in scales? Why was it glowing, and it was golden? Zhu Yao really wanted to greet her Goldfinger's entire family. She had a good trick. The young girl went to work without any worries. It was one thing for her to be dragged into this damned world and seek death in all sorts of ways, but she endured it when she was reborn as a baby for the first time. After all, she was a woman. The second rebirth. She wasn't even a girl anymore. Every day, she would hover between being a lesbian or a gay. In her third rebirth, she wasn't even a human anymore. Was she going to become a beast? God, even if you have a heavy taste, don't drag me into it. If you have the guts, don't leave after school. After roaring 800 times in her heart, Zhu Yao had no choice but to accept the fact that she was no longer a human. She simply looked at her own scaly long tail. It also had 4 hook-like claws. Thinking about it, it was not an ordinary small animal. It might be a demonic beast. And the monster beasts in this world were definitely Ultraman's little monsters. He was a professional at taking a beating. If he was not careful, he might even be captured and kept as a spirit pet, the kind that would be enslaved for life. Just thinking about it, her future was filled with darkness. In this world, most probably, only Sesame, that fool, would be so loyal to someone else's pet. Speaking of Sesame, she recalled that before her rebirth, her master had placed it into her divine sense as well. She could not help but call out, "Sesame!" The moment her words fell. She felt something flying out of her divine sense, and with a rumble, a demonic beast mountain landed in front of it. Meow! The demonic beast mountain timidly let out a cry. It glanced at her, and even cautiously took 2 steps back. It did not have the slightest bit of craziness from before, and it even carried a hint of respect. This guy is crazy. Where's that domineering opening line of his roar? Zhu Yao lowered her head and looked at Sesame, who was acting a little abnormally. She could not help but mutter. Why did you become so big? Sesame's body trembled, and with a meow, it instantly shrunk by several dozen times. When it was about the same size as her, it finally stopped. It weakly glanced at her, and a hint of excitement could actually be seen in its black eyes. Zhu Yao seriously looked at it and exclaimed, "How did you become a 9th ranked? Could it be that it had suppressed its cultivation again?" When Sesame heard this, its emotions instantly sank, and even its voice carried a hint of grievance. "I don't know either. When I woke up from Mistress's divine sense, I realized I had fallen to the 9th ranked. How was that possible? Its cultivation did not fall the last time she was reborn either. Then what about me?" Zhu Yao clenched her own claws, and sensed her own cultivation. Mistress is a demigod, a demigod. Before Zhu Yao could come to a conclusion, Sesame rushed to answer, and its entire beast looked a little excited. What was up with this little fool this time? Why was it even happier than her when she was reborn? it didn't even seem to mind that its cultivation had fallen. But why did her cultivation suddenly increase? Back then, it was understandable that she had to stop the metal spirit from forming her nascent soul, but this time, she didn't do anything at all. Could it be that her cultivation would rise by a large realm every time she died? She wouldn't immediately ascend the next time she died, right? Mistress, are you hungry? Do you want to drink water? Do you want to eat meat? Sesame, go beat up a low-ranked demonic beast, alright? Sesame suggested with sparkling eyes. Wait, Sesame's reaction was completely wrong. Although it did suck up to her a little in the past, it wasn't this passionate. Could there be a problem with this demonic beast body she had reincarnated into? Zhu Yao did not reply, and decided to figure it out herself. Because she was still unfamiliar with her current body, she stood up out of habit. Using her 2 claws at the back, she walked around Sesame and out of the overly tall grass. As expected, there was a small river behind her. Due to her rebirth syndrome, she still did not have any spiritual energy. If she wanted to know what kind of demonic beast she was, she could only look at her reflection in the water. When she looked, Zhu Yao was given a fright. Her head was huge, and there were 2 horns on her head. She had a horse-like face, and there were even 2 long whiskers at the sides. This look, dragon. She was actually a dragon. As a descendant of the Yellow Flame Emperor, a descendant of dragons, she seemed to be able to recognize the animal in the water at first glance. The answer was a little shocking. Zhu Yao was stunned for a long while, and did not regain her senses. Mistress. Sesame anxiously jumped around her. Mistress, what's wrong? I want some peace and quiet. Although turning into a dragon was a rather mighty and domineering thing, a dragon was still an animal. Why are you calling me mistress? Zhu Yao noticed the sudden change in its form of address. Sesame's eyes shone. You're currently a dragon. The leader of the beast race is naturally my mistress. There were such benefits to being a dragon. Are all the demonic beasts in the world the same? Sesame nodded. This was the suppression of the demonic beast's bloodline. The dragon race belonged to the god race, and they were born to rule over demonic beasts. Their very existence alone was capable of subduing tens of thousands of beasts. However, it had lived for so many years. Not to mention the world of immortal cultivation, even in the upper realm, they had never seen the legendary dragon clan. Right now, there was actually one in front of it, and it was alive. Although it was still a young dragon, and its cultivation was only at the demigod stage of the human race. However, it was the inheritance of an ancient bloodline. It made it wish to crawl beneath her feet at all times, and swear allegiance to her. I really want to hug Mistress's thigh. What should I do? Even with Sesame's explanation, Zhu Yao was still very confused. In her eyes, no matter if you're a dragon or a beast, you're still a little monster that had to be beaten. Furthermore, with its current state, how was she supposed to return to Ancient Hill Sect? Just when Zhu Yao was troubled, she suddenly saw a white figure flying over from the sky. In just an instant, it landed in front of her, and along with it, a gust of wind had almost blown her away. Such a big master. Yu Yan looked at the ground a little blankly as well. That slender little creature, if not for that strand of divine sense, and Sesame who was standing next to it, he really wouldn't dare to recognize it. Your sister. Before he could say out that pain in the ass name, Zhu Yao hurriedly roared out. As I thought. Yu Yan frowned, and sighed. As I thought, what's the meaning of this? Do you dare to change the method of recognizing your kin, hey? Yu Yan squatted down, as though he had accepted his fate. Reaching out a palm, he signaled her to climb up. Zhu Yao habitually retracted her front paw. In an instant, she stood up, and even tried her best to straighten her entire body. Using her back paw, she slowly walked into his palm. That strange posture caused Yu Yan to be startled for a moment. After climbing up, Zhu Yao realized that her entire body was actually not even as big as her master's palm. So earlier, it wasn't Sesame who grew bigger, but she was pitifully small. She suddenly recalled the time when Xiao Yi formed his Azoth core, the dragon that appeared in the sky. Although it was just an illusory image, it was extremely mighty and domineering. Why did it turn into a worm when it came to her? Yu Yan did not hesitate, as he once again brought her back to Jade Forest Mountain. He placed Zhu Yao on the stone table in the courtyard, and sized her up for a moment. However, he was not interested in her sudden rise in cultivation. Instead, he asked, "Are you able to transform into a human form?" Zhu Yao shook her head. Although she currently had the cultivation of a demigod, and could be considered as a 10th-ranked demonic beast, she did not have any spiritual energy in her body. Forget about transforming into a human form, she couldn't even transform a little. When the time comes, she wouldn't be accidentally trampled to death by someone, right? Yu Yan looked at her up and down for a long while, yet, he did not know what to do with her. He had already made various preparations for his disciple's reincarnation, and he believed that no matter what she turned into, he would be able to accept it. Who would have known that she was basically not a human? Yu Yan was deeply saddened. Since they were of different races, he was unable to see the situation of her body. If it was the same as last time, her cultivation was stuck between the core shattering and nascent soul formation, what would she do? Just as he was thinking about how he could help his disciple examine his body, the sound of a demonic beast suddenly came from the direction of the main peak. The sound was sad and sorrowful. Zhu Yao seemed to have been infected by that voice, as her heart sank for a moment. What's that sound? What happened over there? Zhu Yao curiously asked. Yu Yan's expression sank. Turning his head, he thoughtfully glanced at his own disciple, as though he was hesitating about something. After a while, he said, "That's the cry of death that Zmo's spiritual beast let out from the main mountain. Zmo is currently mourning for his personal succeeding disciple." Zhu Yao blanked, and asked, "Ah. Had Sect Master Zmo ever taken in a personal succeeding disciple before? How come I didn't know? What's his name?" Chapter 88. Mistress, Zmo's disciple is. Just as Sesame was about to reply, Yu Yan coldly glanced at it, and it instantly swallowed its words. Yu Yan reached out his hand to pat on her slender body, and sighed. "This is good too." Zhu Yao was stunned. What did he mean? "Speak clearly, hey." Just as he was about to ask about it, after the bird cry from the main mountain, the wails of various demonic beasts resounded throughout the entire ancient hill sect. Even the few celestial cranes on the Jade Forest Mountain let out those sorrowful cries as well. Zhu Yao did not know if it was because she had turned into a beast as well, but at that moment, she felt stuffy in the depths of her heart as well, and it was getting more and more serious. It was so uncomfortable that she could not find an exit, yet, she was completely unable to find the reason behind it. What's wrong with her? Zhu Yao's emotions lasted for an entire day. She sat cross-legged on the stone table in her master's courtyard, and listened to the wails of various demonic beasts for an entire day. Only when the sun was about to set did she regain her senses. When Zhu Yao regained her senses, she even wondered if she had not taken her medicine, as she actually sat there for an entire day. She did not know when her master had left, and even Sesame had disappeared without a trace. Zhu Yao silently retorted at her master, this unromantic secret admirer. He actually threw her here all by herself. It was no wonder he was still single after several tens of thousands of years. After thinking for a while, he decided to return to the house and wait for his master. He wanted to return to his human form first. Sesame said that she was currently a demigod, which meant that she was equivalent to a 10th ranked. Although the race of dragons had disappeared from this world for a very long time, and she was not sure if they possessed the innate ability to transform, she knew that even a 10th ranked dragon could transform. Just as he got up from the table, he saw a small head popping out from the bushes outside the courtyard. It looked around as if it was looking for something. He was wearing a white coat. He looked like a 4 or 5-year-old kid. Zhu Yao felt it was strange. There were very few outsiders in Jade Forest Mountain, and even if the sect master was looking for Yu Yan, he would only send an inner chamber disciple to pass the message. Where did this little one pop out from? And looking at his sneaky behavior, it was obvious that he did not have any experience in doing bad things. Otherwise, why would she wear this kind of white clothes in the middle of the night? Wasn't it obvious to others where she was hiding? The little devil in Zhu Yao's heart instantly raised its fork, and with a leap, it flew up. That's right, she just remembered that dragons could fly. It flew back into the house and used its tail to wrap around an oil lamp before flying towards the little guy. Brat! The child who had just climbed out of the bushes was startled by her. Immediately, it plunged its little head back into the bushes. His little body was shivering. I know I was wrong. Master, please don't punish me. She hadn't even said anything yet. Was it really okay for him to be this scared? Zhu Yao's heart instantly softened a little, and she no longer had the intention to scare her. Little friend, it's already so late. Why did you come to Jade Forest Mountain? The little but that was exposed moved, and after twisting a few times, he pulled his head out again. He looked around and saw a long and slender snake-like creature coiled around the oil lamp in front of him. He immediately heaved a sigh of relief. So it's not. You scared me. Little bug, are you a demonic beast? You're the worm, your whole family are worms. Little friend. Why are you in Jade Forest Mountain, and what are you doing here? I'm going to live here sooner or later. The little girl tilted her head and blinked as she answered. Zhu Yao instantly felt her heart skip a beat. Where do you live? Here. I live there. The little girl pointed to another straw hut at the side. After pondering for a moment, she added. But father and mother said I'm still young, so they won't let me live there. When I grow a little older, I'll live there every day. Little friend, it's wrong to lie, you know. That straw hut clearly belonged to her, all right? I never lie. The little girl instantly puffed up her face, and argued angrily. I live there. Zhu Yao's expression sank, and a guess suddenly surfaced in the depths of her heart. And she didn't like this guess at all. Little friend, you can't possibly be a disciple of Jade Forest Mountain, right? That's right. The little girl nodded heavily. Zhu Yao, however, felt unwell. The depths of her heart ached. So her master had taken in another disciple, and it wasn't her, but someone else. Master, you can't be a Lolican as well, right? After pondering for a moment, she was even more certain of this thought. Her master was such a powerful person, how could he possibly take in just one disciple? Looking at the other mountain lords, just the chamber disciples alone numbered to more than 10. Even the 3 demigod sovereigns had taken in quite a few disciples when they were at the nascent soul stage. It's just that they had fallen earlier. It was human nature for her master to take in another disciple. However, this was human nature. Why was it so irritating? Understanding was one thing, but accepting it was another thing. When did your master take you in as a disciple? Zhu Yao asked. The little girl was startled for a moment, and then, she lowered her head and began to count with her fingers. 1 day. 2 days. 3 days. So many days. Zhu Yao sighed, and for a moment, she no longer had the mood to tease her. Never mind, I will send you back. In a few days, I will introduce your senior martial sister to you. Wait until she could return to her human form. Senior martial sister. The little girl was dumbfounded for a moment. Suddenly, her eyes reddened, and she looked at Zhu Yao with an accusatory look. You're lying. Daddy said that master only has me as a disciple, and I'm the only one. Bao Bao doesn't have any other senior martial sisters. You're a bad person. Zhu Yao's expression darkened. Little wimp, don't push your luck. She had already given half of her master to you, why are you crying? I want to cry too. I'm not lying. You do indeed have a senior martial sister. It was her. Whoa. The little girl finally could not hold it in any longer, and golden beans began to fall out. She ruthlessly glared at Zhu Yao. I don't care. Master only has me as a disciple. When my master returns, I will tell him that I don't want senior martial sister. No. After saying that, she stomped her feet and ran away. Little golden beans scattered all over the ground. Zhu Yao, mama's egg, she didn't want a junior martial sister either. Zhu Yao's heart was burning with rage. Because of this little junior martial sister who suddenly popped out, she had the urge to scratch her master's ice-cold face at any moment. She had only been gone for a few days, and her master had already taken in a little junior martial sister. Didn't he know that in all of the novels, junior martial sisters were all used to develop a boyfriend? She didn't want to be someone else's senior martial sister, she just wanted to be someone else's master's wife. Bastard! Oh right, wasn't there a setting called Master's Wife? Zhu Yao instantly found a little comfort. Lowering her head, she looked at her own slender body, and instantly, all of her anger dissipated. Early in the morning of the second day, the moment Yu Yan returned to the house, he was pestered by his stupid disciple. Master, I want to return to my human form, I want to return to my human form. Oh, roar! Yu Yan raised his hand, making it easier for his stupid disciple to climb onto his shoulders. Your current situation is unclear, it's not good for you to recover your spiritual energy too quickly. If you're too slow, it'll be too late. Zhu Yao glanced at him with a wronged expression. Who knew how many more little junior martial sisters you would find for me? Little junior martial sisters, and even little junior martial sisters. Actually, it's possible for Lord to recover your spiritual energy right now. Sesame suddenly popped out, and shrunk to about the same size as Zhu Yao. Its eyes shone as it looked at the dragon-shaped Zhu Yao. With a leap, it leaped onto the stone table, and was itching to climb onto Yu Yan's shoulders as well, to get closer to Zhu Yao. However, it was stopped by Yu Yan's cold glare. What do you mean? Zhu Yao asked. Lord is a dragon. Sesame said with an envious look. The bodies of dragons are innately strong. Even if there are any problems during the advancement process, their bodies are completely capable of withstanding it. So there were such benefits to being a dragon. Zhu Yao immediately looked at her master with sparkling eyes. Help me, help me, help me. Yu Yan sighed. After pondering for a moment, he finally agreed. Bringing his disciple to the bottom of the cold lake where he used to train, he once again reinforced the formation at the bottom of the lake. While he was at it, he threw Sesame out, before retrieving a few purple lightning bolts. You can first try absorbing a portion of the lightning spiritual energy. If there are any abnormalities, do not force it. Zhu Yao nodded. Closing her eyes, she began to sense the lightning spiritual energy. With just a thought, she felt a warm current flowing through the depths of her heart. In her empty dantian, there was an additional strand of familiar spiritual energy, though it was pitifully little. It only existed in her dantian for a moment, before disappearing without a trace. And the purple lightning bolt her master took out, had already disappeared. Master, the spiritual energy, disappeared. Zhu Yao was a little startled, as she blankly raised her head. This sort of phenomenon had never happened before. In the past, the spiritual energy she absorbed would always be stored in her body, but the moment she absorbed it, it disappeared in a flash. Yu Yan frowned. Your dantian can't store spiritual energy. Zhu Yao nodded. Yu Yan's expression instantly turned exceptionally ugly. Her dantian could not store spiritual energy. This was clearly a sign of her spirit vein being destroyed. However, she was clearly able to absorb that lightning spiritual energy, and her cultivation was at the demigod level as well. Why? Other than not being able to store spiritual energy, is there anything else wrong with your body? Zhu Yao concentrated and sensed for a moment. No. Other than being a little hungry, she did not feel anything else. Try again. Yu Yan said. Zhu Yao obediently closed her eyes once again. The lightning bolts outside were instantly absorbed by her. However, just like before, the moment the spiritual energy entered her body, it instantly disappeared without a trace. Zhu Yao was about to cry. Could it be that she wanted to be a finger-sized dragon for her entire life? What should I do? Yu Yan could not figure out the reason either. In the beginning, he was worried that since she had just entered the demigod stage, if she was unable to stop the spiritual energy the moment she took in the spiritual energy, it would cause her spiritual energy to go berserk. But now, she could not even store spiritual energy, let alone the spiritual energy going berserk. Let's return for now. Yu Yan opened his palm, hinting her to climb onto his palm. Your master will think of another way. Zhu Yao glanced at his palm. For some reason, she once again recalled that little junior martial sister from last night, and the depths of her heart began to turn sour. Currently, she did not have a human form, and there was no hope for her to even recover her cultivation. As expected, it would be easier for her master to find another disciple, right? She knew that she was venting her anger on him, but she could not control it. She needed to calm down for a moment. Hence, she did not climb onto his palm. Instead, she turned her head, opened her claws, and climbed onto the path she came from. Yu Yan was startled for a moment. He did not say anything, and silently followed behind her. Chapter 89. When she finally crawled out of the water, looking at the dancing blue specks of light at the edge of the cold lake, she felt displeased, and slapped her tail over. However, not only were those blue specks of light not scattered, they even poured into her body together. Even the surrounding specks of light of various colors rushed into her dantian, and then, they stopped moving. Zhu Yao suddenly widened her eyes. Master! Master, hurry and come, there's a butterfly here. Yu Yan followed closely behind her, and naturally saw this scene. He was a little shocked as he looked at his stupid disciple who was still raising her tail. You've grown fat. How's that possible? Zhu Yao was shocked. Out of habit, she wanted to look at her own waist, but when she lowered her head and saw her round dragon body, she began to consider a serious question. Which part of her body was considered as her waist? Yu Yan sighed. He immediately picked her up, and brought her to the side of the water. Zhu Yao looked at her reflection in the water confusedly. There wasn't any change. It was a golden round little dragon, exactly the same as the one she saw before. Wait a minute. Why did it feel like it had grown by a size? Master, master, master. Zhu Yao was so excited that she did not know what to say. My Dantian has spiritual energy now. Yu Yan then placed her back onto the ground and frowned. Take a look inside yourself. See what kind of spiritual energy is being absorbed into your Dantian. Zhu Yao obediently closed her eyes and looked inside her Dantian. The moment she saw her Dantian, countless specks of light were currently gathering together and were circulating in a certain direction. Within those specks of light, not only were there lightning spiritual energy that she was familiar with, there were also red, blue, green, yellow, and other different specks of light. Master, my Dantian has all kinds of spiritual energy. Just what the hell was this? Wasn't she a lightning spirit vein holder? As I thought. Yu Yan sighed, and then said with certainty. Your spirit vein has changed. Then I am now omnipotent spirit vein. What? What did he mean? Omnipotent spirit vein. Yu Yan said. All of the spiritual energy in this world can be absorbed by you, and all types of mystic arts can be used by you as well. However, in order to balance the spiritual energy, your cultivation speed will slow down as well. Then is that good or bad? I can't say for sure about this either. Yu Yan frowned. Earlier, she was simply waving her tail casually. It seemed like her heaven-defying affinity with spiritual energy had not disappeared. It was just that it had changed from a single lightning spiritual energy to an all-elemental spiritual energy. Don't worry too much. Although your spiritual root has changed, you can absorb all types of spiritual qi. It's much easier than just one type of spiritual qi. As long as you don't intentionally stop it, you'll be able to recover your cultivation and take human form in a few days. Ah! Does this mean that she doesn't need to guide spiritual aura into her body to recover her spiritual aura? Was there such a good thing? Don't lie to me, I don't read much. Yu Yan once again looked at his excited disciple. His brows furrowed even deeper. His disciple's change always gave him a feeling that a huge wave of trouble was about to come knocking on his door. Although he wasn't afraid of trouble, he didn't have much time left. He raised his head to look at the sky, and his eyes gradually darkened. There were too many mysteries surrounding his disciple, and the more he investigated, the less he had a clue. He always felt that there was a pair of hands controlling her from behind, but he had no clue. It seemed that this answer could only be found in that world. Just as her master had said. Zhu Yao no longer intentionally sealed her meridians, and after rejecting the spiritual energy from entering her body, her cultivation and body size rose very quickly. Yesterday, she was as small as a loach. On the second day, she turned into an eel. On the third day, she turned into a small snake. On the fourth day, she grew into a giant python. On the fifth day, she crushed her master's house. Her body faintly emitted a draconic aura as well. It frightened the little animals of Jade Forest Mountain to the point of leaving together, not daring to return home. Later on, Sesame was the one who told her the method to conceal her presence. Only then did she suppress the draconic aura that was constantly being emitted. However, she was so huge, and she was even shining with golden light. If not for the formation her master had placed down, she would have been seen by others long ago. If she were to continue growing like this, she would be discovered sooner or later. She recalled how dragons were described in the ancient books her master had shown her in the past. Skin could be used to cut clothes, blood could be used to create talismans, flesh could be used to create pellets, and bones could be used to create artifacts. In short, her entire body was filled with materials. She was basically a moving treasure trove. She could already imagine that countless people were currently sharpening their blades and walking towards her. Yet, she did not know what her master was busy with these few days. After he returned and placed down a formation for her, he left her to fend for herself. She would not be able to see him every 2 to 3 days, causing her to not even have the chance to seek comfort. He couldn't have gone to meet that new disciple of his, right? When she thought of this, Zhu Yao felt uncomfortable all over her body. No, she had to return to her human form as soon as possible. Wasn't there a good saying? Strike while the iron is hot. She had to hurry and bring this piece of meat, her master, back into her mouth while it was still warm. On the 6th day, Zhu Yao realized that her body had once again doubled in size. This time, not only her master's house, even the courtyard was no longer able to contain her body. Early in the morning, she felt her neck itching, and she really wanted to roar a few times. She endured it, and controlled the sound that was about to escape from her mouth. However, the more she endured, the more uncomfortable her body felt. Sweeping her divine sense around, she was still unable to find her master's figure. Zhu Yao felt a wave of disappointment. Did he go to her little disciple's place again? Zhu Yao instantly felt a heart-wrenching pain in the depths of her heart. The moment her mind relaxed, a dragon roar instantly escaped from her mouth. This roar was extremely loud, and even she herself was shocked. As though it carried the force of tearing through the void, it charged straight into the clouds. Then, it was as though the entire heaven and earth was reverberating with that dragon roar, and it spread out one after another. Following this roar, the uncomfortable feeling in her throat instantly disappeared without a trace. However, her body felt even more uncomfortable. Pieces of dragon scales shone with a golden radiance, enveloping her entire body within the golden radiance. A moment later, she turned into an illusory figure and flew towards the sky. After circling half around in the sky, she slowly disappeared. And the radiance that enveloped her body slowly dimmed as well. Zhu Yao felt her body was changing, and slowly, her arms and legs were growing out. Could this be human transformation? Zhu Yao was instantly excited. She could finally turn back into a human. Finally, the golden radiance faded, and she had completely returned to her human form. Before the last strand of golden radiance faded, Yu Yan, who had sensed the commotion, finally returned. Master. Zhu Yao gave him a huge smile. Hurry and look, I've finally turned back into a human. Yu Yan, however, was not as surprised as she was. Instead, his expression sank, and he nodded. How is it? Am I a girl this time? Yu Yan was startled. He swept a glance at her, and after a while, he continued to nod. Do I look good now? Even better than before. That's great. Zhu Yao instantly felt boundless satisfaction. Yu Yan silently walked over. Reaching out his hand, he took out something from his storage pouch, and passed it over. You'll look even better if you wear some clothes. Ayaha, Zhu Yao felt that all of her moral integrity in this lifetime had already fallen, and she had even overdrafted it. Just now. Just a quarter of an hour ago, she actually streaked in front of her master. Zhu Yao buried her head into the blanket. So tired, she felt that she would never love again. Give me your hand. The witness at the scene calmly grabbed onto his stupid disciple's hand, and seriously began to inspect it. Do you have to be so calm? At the very least, you've seen the body of a girl you're secretly in love with. Is her charm really that low? This is really hurtful, alright. Zhu Yao was in a dilemma. At that moment, she could no longer care so much, and immediately retracted her own hand. Master, there's a question I've wanted to ask for a long time. Are you secretly in love with me or not? If she were to continue holding it in, she would go crazy. Yu Yan was startled. Looking at his stupid disciple who had suddenly become stern, he had a confused look. Secretly in love. What's that? A certain master who was already used to his disciples' occasional spasms, replied with a stern look as well. Don't mess around, I have yet to finish checking your pulse. After saying that, he once again grabbed onto her hand. The hell? Zhu Yao's patience finally ran out. Taking advantage of the situation, she pulled her master onto the bed as well, and then, with a counterattack, she heavily pressed onto his body. Yu Wang. Yu Yan frowned. Just as he was about to flare up, Zhu Yao immediately sealed his mouth. With her mouth. Yu Yan fiercely widened his eyes, and his entire body stiffened. That strange feeling which he had always felt had returned, as though he was struck by lightning. A numb feeling spread throughout his entire body, and it even ignited a ball of fire in his chest, burning it. Zhu Yao forcefully pressed onto his lips, and at the end, she even heavily bit him. Only then did she speak up fiercely. I'll say it one more time, my name is Zhu Yao. Remember this isn't your disciple's name, but your woman's name. You had better fucking remember this in your heart. Zhu Yao angrily waited for his reaction, yet, Yu Yan was still looking at her blankly, and did not speak for a long time. Only then did she realize that her face was a little red. This was her first time forcing herself on someone, she had no experience at all. Why don't we study the situation a little more before doing it again? Zhu Yao had the intention to retreat, and just as she was about to crawl down the bed, Yu Yan woke up at this moment. Pulling onto his disciple in front of him, he reached his hand to the back of her head, and once again pressed down. Until their lips once again tightly pressed together, his mouth was filled with his disciple's fresh and sweet taste. That numb feeling which he had never felt before once again came. It was very strange, but he liked it very much. He wanted to linger a little longer, and a little more. A moment later. She did not know who was the first to end this kiss, but at the moment their lips and teeth separated, the sound of their slightly heavy breathing could be heard. Zhu Yao even felt her entire body turning soft. Laying on her master's body, she listened to his heartbeat that was beating at the same rhythm as her own. Her mind was blank for a moment. Master acting like this, did it mean, master? She felt that she had to clarify. Do you, like me? Yu Yan was even more dumbfounded as he looked at his disciple who was different from before, his face was filled with confusion. If she liked him, naturally, he liked her. Otherwise, why would he take her in as his disciple? However, he faintly felt that the like his disciple mentioned was different from what he thought in the depths of his heart. I don't know. He honestly replied. Chapter 90. Zhu Yao instantly felt as though a fire was burning her, causing her to forget all her reservations, morals, and worldview. With a swoosh, she pulled apart his clothes, lowered her head, and began to nibble on him as she arrogantly announced. No matter if you liked me in the past or not, I'm now officially informing you. This lady has taken a liking to you, and you're mine in the future. If you dare to let another woman touch you, no matter if you're my master or not, this old lady will still castrate you. Probably because she said it too seriously, Yu Yan was slightly startled, and his blurry eyes instantly cleared up quite a bit. Staring at his disciple who was still clinging on to him, a moment later, he finally thought of a possibility. You want to become a dual practitioner with me? What else? Zhu Yao once again stamped it. Am I discussing the importance of human reproduction and development with you? Yu Yan did not reply, however, his face began to heat up out of nowhere. A bunch of messy emotions that even he himself could not understand surged out from the depths of his heart. Happy. Or excited. He could not tell, he simply felt his face heating up. However, to become a dual practitioner with his disciple, it seemed like it wasn't that hard to accept. Zhu Yao was dumbfounded by his look. Why was her master's face turning red? And it was even turning redder, as though it was about to burn. He couldn't possibly still be an innocent virgin, right? Master, reply me, don't just focus on blushing. With a red face like this, and even looking at her with an expectant look, she basically could not hold it in, and would think of him at any moment. All right. Zhu Yao instantly felt her wolf blood boiling. Her hands moved, and she could not help but rub herself against his chest. You forced me to do this. Just as she was about to start eating, a certain master seemed to have suddenly reacted. With a light push, Zhu Yao was pushed off the bed. In an instant, Yu Yan had already dressed himself neatly, and stood up. However, his eyes were still not looking at her. His face still had a blush that had yet to fade away, and he tried his best to maintain a serious look. Nonsense. How can you be so careless with something like this? Zhu Yao rubbed her sore butt, and when she crawled up, he was already gone. She trembled from the cold wind that blew into her room. For a moment, she had the urge to flip the table. Mama's egg. This old lady has already taken off her pants, and you're telling me this? Ever since that day when Zhu Yao acted as a tyrant, her Yuji had never returned to Jade Forest Mountain ever again, as she flipped the entire Jade Forest Mountain upside down. There was no sign of him either. Angry? Flipped out? Or did he have no feelings for her at all, so he ran away? The more Zhu Yao thought about it, the more confused she became. Clearly, the atmosphere between the two of them was pretty good that day. Although he ran away in the end, she did not believe that her master did not have any feelings for her. Yet, even after searching the entire Jade Forest Mountain, she was still unable to find his shadow. Moreover, there were many new formations in the Jade Peak Forest. As though she had completely isolated this place from the outside world. Her cultivation had actually recovered, but she, who had completely no knowledge towards formations, was unable to leave this Jade Forest Mountain, and could only wait. After waiting on the peak for 10 days, his master, who had run away from home, finally returned. Zhu Yao's eyes shone, and she immediately jumped down from the rooftop. Yu Yan, however, slightly turned his body, and pulled out a small child from behind him. Moreover, this person looked damnably familiar. It was the little one she saw half a month ago who claimed to be her junior sister. Zhu Yao's footsteps paused, and in an instant, she felt something was stuck in the depths of her heart. Stuffy. Yu Yan, however, held on to that child, and walked towards her with large strides. Stopping 2 steps away from her, he said with a gentle expression. You. Yao, let your master introduce you to someone. He pulled the little girl forward a little. The child timidly glanced at her. This was the first time she saw her master having such a gentle expression, and he even remembered half of her name, which was rare. Yet, it was because of this new disciple beside him. Zhu Yao suddenly felt like crying. There's no need. Zhu Yao glanced at that child. Baby, right? How did you know? The child's eyes shone, as he looked at her with an excited expression. Zhu Yao gently pulled the corner of her lips into a smile, however, she raised her head and looked straight at Yu Yan. Was this considered as a form of rejection? Because he had a new disciple? But she still wanted to get to the bottom of this. Master, answer me honestly. Do you like me or not? Yu Yan's expression blanked, and he hurriedly turned his eyes away. Cuckoo. Nonsense. Let me finish speaking. This child is a new disciple, right? Zhu Yao once again interrupted his words. I know. Yu Fong looked at her a little strangely. Zhu Yao however looked at him even more seriously, and continued to ask. Do you like me or not? Mama's egg, give me a definite answer. Yu Yan was once again rendered speechless by her straightforward words. After a moment of silence, he pretended to be angry and said, "Stop fooling around. You're the one fooling around, your entire family is fooling around." Yu Yan coughed a few times, and finally managed to regain his dignity. "Since the two of you already know each other, then bring her along to familiarize yourself with her." Zhu Yao instantly felt a chill in her heart. She's Zimo's daughter. The hell, how did she grow so big in a blink of an eye? But why did the words on her face become even fainter? Yes. Yu Yan frowned. In the past few years, she had barged into Jade Forest Mountain several times to look for you. So, today, I had her meet you while I was at it, so as to save some trouble. So the master that she was talking about that day was her. Was it because he had never seen his master before that he climbed up in the middle of the night to take a peek? Touching the soft little dumpling in her arms, her heart immediately softened. So cute. He gently wiped her tears and said, "Good girl, don't cry. Will master abandon me?" Xiao Tuanzi still had lingering fears. Of course not. Zhu Yao instantly felt that she, who was conflicted earlier, was basically an idiot. She kissed her twice. "Babe is so cute, master can't wait to like you." After saying that, he coaxed her a few more times and kissed her a few more times. Only then did his disciple's wounded heart finally stop crying. Zhu Yao still wanted to continue coaxing him a few more times, however, Yu Yan's face, who was standing at the side, had already darkened. He said coldly, "Since you've seen him, go down the mountain. Remember my words, within a month, you are not allowed to come up the mountain on your own." The little disciple fearfully glanced at her own grandmaster, and reluctantly glanced at her own master. Only then did she head down the mountain with every step she took, turning her head back. Before she left, she did not forget to turn her head back and loudly shout that her master had to remember her and so on. Having such an obedient and sensible disciple was really good. She silently decided that even if she was a bug, she would still save her completely. "You. About what you said that day." Only when he sensed that the little girl had already left Jade Forest Mountain, did Yu Yan finally speak up hesitantly. Zhu Yao was startled, and turned her head back. "That day. Overlord, that day." Looking at his serious look, Zhu Yao could not help but feel a little nervous as well. Yu Yan, however, calmed down. Even the redness on his face, which was forced out by her bold words earlier, had receded quite a bit. Taking a step forward, he said with a serious look. "However, I cannot agree to your request now." Mama's egg. After doing this for so long, was he still going to reject her? Zhu Yao instantly felt a little sad. Yu Yan, however, raised his head and looked at the sky. As though he had decided on something, he took a deep breath, and slowly spoke up. "When I took in a disciple, I had initially wanted to pass down the mystic arts of my Jade Forest Mountain. When you successfully form your Azoth core, and are able to hold your own, that would be the day of my ascension. However, I never expected." He never expected that this disciple of his would be so worrisome, and that he could not let her go so easily. Yu Yan took 2 steps forward, and looked straight at his disciple's evidently slightly sad eyes. Habitually, he reached out his hand to stroke her head. "The matter with your body is too strange, I'm afraid that I won't be able to find the reason in a short period of time. So, I've decided to ascend." Nanny, you're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.